The revenge of By the Numbers is brought to you by esports.bet, where they are still running their up to 100 USDT bet forgiveness first time deposit bonus. So if you've never put crypto onto esports.bet before, then you can go ahead, make a bet. If you lose the bet, then you can message the mod mail on Discord, discord.gg/esportsbet. Tell them Last Free Nation sent you, and they will credit you your original stake that you lost up to 100 USDT.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast. Naimu, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. Oh my God, Naimu! Unbelievable!
Hey everybody, Merry Christmas and welcome to another episode of Revenge of By the Numbers. We had a week off. I was under the weather. I was sick. I caught a cold. There's been a cold going around. It laid me, decked me out for a couple of days. But now we're back in the mix. We've had a week to recover, and we're ready to talk some Counter-Strike. So Thorin, how you doing, man? You've had a good week so far. I know you've had a busy one. You and Maui have just been cranking out the content, so that's really sick. Just gives you a lot to catch up on. But how's it going?
Yeah, I mean, the joke is, here's another reason why in esports I've had like unique level of productivity and success compared to other people is, you know how people who work events, for example, the classic problem they have is they get home and because they're too tired, they just take the next 2 weeks off. You don't do any extra stuff because you're recouping for the next event, right? Most people in esports act that way. So basically when the seasons aren't going on, when there aren't active tournaments, they just chill. Whereas the joke is, I learned years ago, the off seasons when you can actually get all these fucking players to do interviews and shows. When they're not, guess what? When he has no tournaments, I can get Blame F to come on. If you go on Insight and if you go on this channel here, Snake and Banter, you will see an episode with Blame F. I'm not going to get that when the major's on or something like that. Am I, like, you know what I mean? Or a tournament that he's in, like a Blast or something. So that's why I actually personally do it inverted. I go even harder into the off season, mate. And also, this is why you'll never beat me if you're a content creator. I actually enjoy doing it. I'm not just doing it for the money in the right. If like the joke is, I'd rather do a show each day than have just nothing in my calendar, you know, and just have 3 hours off and read a comic or something. Like, I like doing a bit of work. Gives you a nice feeling.
You're doing a Valorant talk show as well. I saw with Geo, and I think you had Sapphire on as a guest. Yes. I saw that pop up as well. That was pretty cool. I haven't had a chance to listen to that one, but I am interested in listening to what Sapphire.
You'll be interested in that one. Put it this way, I will say, here's the thing. It's definitely a more, let's say, favorable one to their argument. I don't really push back much, but the whole point of the episode, and this is actually a valid reason, I think, which idiots don't think about, is it wasn't a debate show, Semmler. The point there is I'm trying to allow them to say their experiences of career. Like, so yeah, that just wasn't the moment to have like a back and forth. In fact, I even realized, by the way, as a quick aside, because we've talked about this many times on the Petty Grievances segment, I even think a massive part of the problem when you have those discussions is that both sets of people are talking about something totally different. So if you notice, if you actually look at the way it's being framed by a lot of the women, by the way, a lot of women who aren't in esports even, their real contention is just like, when I play in solo queue, people are rude to me. So I want somewhere where it's sort of like, and this is what Richard always says, it's sort of like women's night at a gym. There's no one to annoy you. You can just go that night if you're a woman and you know that some guy isn't going to be looking at your ass or saying something weird to you. So the point is, like, I've obviously always been in favor of that. Like, I actually think, by the way, little edgy topic for you, men should be allowed their own spaces in society. In fact, I think that's part of what degraded culture is, that you can't have a working man's club.
Thin ice, my dude.
So my point is,
you're going to be saying is, okay, never mind.
I was always in favor of everyone being able to have their own private space if they indeed choose to. The problem is, obviously, that is irrelevant to the topic of, do women get better to a professional level if they play with other women? That's a totally different topic, which is a topic you wanted to discuss. So I will say, I don't discuss that part much on that one. That's more something for separately. And also, unfortunately, men and women do communicate in different ways, and the male sort of Ben Shapiro style of being like, you are totally wrong, I have all the facts, and here's why you are utterly wrong and destroyed, like that works so poorly if you use it against women, by the way. They will never just go like, well, good point, you have beaten me. So like, they're going to get really emotional off that. So I would just say, if you, as a general rule, if you want to talk about these things, if you directly engage with a woman, don't take that tack. That tack, they do not respond well to that.
I would be very curious to have a conversation with Sapphire, though, considering she used to have the perspective that I have a lot of
That's what she
respect
talks
for.
about in this episode, yeah.
All right, and then she changes it around, and then she obviously changed her perspective
Yes.
completely. She no longer promotes the same point. So, okay, she talks about that in this episode. Interesting.
I mean, the reason why is I set it up with that article Gio had written, where she also had a different perspective, where she went to like an all-girls school, and then now she like has a different vision on what it is in esports. Because basically, both of them, Semmler, as a shortcut, basically to save you some time. Both of them used to be in the position everyone was at 10 years ago. If people don't know, this whole political thing of like women, that was never a thing in esports. This was the default position of every woman pro. I actually want to just be pro at Counter-Strike. And as soon as I am good enough, I will leave the women's circuits. And about half of them, I would say about half, used to actively speak against women's tournaments. That used to be the real thing. That's not us saying that. It was them saying it back then. In fact, I even used to think back then, like, look, I sort of respect that you want to be good, but you do realize you're just arguing in favor of no tournaments you could play it effectively. So I even used to think back then, fuck, that might even be too far for me, mate. So it is interesting how that's changed over the years, certainly. The default sort of position.
All of the incentives point towards keeping the grift alive.
Sure.
Now you have people who have come in. There was this documentary that someone reminded me of real quick that just got launched by ESL, a 15-minute thing promoting the Impact finals that happened at DreamHack recently. Okay. And it's just, it makes you want to gouge your eyes out. You know, it's just the most fucking obnoxiously painful 15 minutes to try to make it through, because the entire time it's them just posing as victims, and it's them against the world, and nobody gives a shit until we started doing Impact.
Right.
You know, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like the last 20 years of fucking female CS has never happened. It didn't start until, you know.
Oh, they really do just memory hole that shit.
You, Dagny, you arrived on the scene.
That's the other thing,
the
dude.
hero that's going to save
know
the
something?
female scene.
Fuck this.
It's
Let's do this now.
Insufferably narcissistic and self-centered and egotistical, and the whole thing just reeks of grift. And like this whole thing is just these people that came in afterwards, and they're like, we need to fix this problem that didn't actually exist, and we're going to create the problem so that we can fix the problem and not actually fix the problem, because if we ever fix the problem, then we're out of a fucking job. So fuck these people. It's so insufferable. It is just, it's poisoning esports through and through. And I can only hope that they do such a fucking horrible job and continue being such dislikable people that they get just ousted out of the scene even faster.
Zero
just
chance.
Keep it.
Zero
Keep
chance.
it going.
The other way around, Semmler, as you are pointing out, they have failed upwards, and they're going to get more money and more power.
Exactly.
And in fact, they're going to be untouchable. They already are.
It's unbearable.
I'm going to tell a story right now on this segment about the woman Semmler's talking about. Her name is like Dagny Viberg. She is Weinberg or something. She is a Swedish woman. And she used to work for Metro Esports or something. Was she on the DreamHack side? She was the one who did that Metro Awards, if you remember.
She came to DreamHack, and that was pretty much in line with when DreamHack started to go hard off a cliff and decline.
So basically, a few years ago, it was actually, funnily enough, if no one knows this, a random piece of trivia, the first time me and Frankie ever met or appeared on camera. If you remember, there was a Metro Esports Awards in Sweden that was after DreamHack Stockholm
that I hosted
in 2018, the one that was won by MSL and North over Astralis. So people remember that one. And at this event, which was just like an esports awards, it was actually trying for real, like Metro is a newspaper in Sweden. It was trying to be like a different esports industry awards type approach, right? And so what happened was Semmler got contacted by these people from DreamHack, and they were basically like, look, we want to do this project, like a Hall of Fame, not like an award show rather, but like, you know, how do we do it? Like, how do we get the people to be the judges? How do we get the people to like nominate the right people? And what happened was Semmler himself didn't know every other esports. So he just came to me and he just said, like, do you want to help me with this? Like, you know all the people. I mean, I used to work on the Esports Industry Awards panel at the time. And so I said, yeah, no problem. I can help set that up. Like, you know, we'll invite like these 5 people for League, these 5 people for Dota. So yes, I gave them all the names. By the way, because I knew they were mad walking Swedish, I gave them a whole bunch of female names, Kelsey Moser, you know, all the ones that you'd want to be on this game. Yeah, but here's where it gets incredibly egregious, to show that this Dagny person is actually a horrible human being. Not even just bad at their job, a bad human being. Are you ready? Because even though I did all of that, this dumb fuck didn't actually fully know the scope to which I was involved, right? She thought Semmler just did it or something. And so she just found out after I'd invited all these people and basically done her job for her, she found out that like I was in any context tangentially attached to this award show, and was basically telling Semmler and the others like, this guy can't work on this show. Like, he is a sexist, like all the stupid shit they all say on Twitter, right? So She literally, I did her job for her. She complained about it because she has no clue what the fuck her own job is. And then this is the kicker of all kickers, guys. It had been agreed, apparently, with Semmler, I didn't know this, that I would actually get paid out of a budget for this, that they had to like arrange the whole thing. They just never bothered like mentioning that to me. So they were also going to have me do it for free and insult me internally. Now, this woman, by the way, guys, works as the head person, as far as I know, of the ESL Impact League for ESL. So you can see, the point of this is, by the way, people like Gio and Sapphire are cool. They're by the by, that's an abstract discussion. These people, I agree, are actively harmful to the industry. Because what that means there is, this woman in her own job and life has proof I am none of the things she's pretending I am. But because it's convenient to pretend I am, and she obviously, by the way, I'm just going to say it, she obviously hates men. That's it. I've never met her. I've never spoken to her. I don't know this person. But you can see the level of like vitriol, just the idea that a man's involved, like, puts their heckles. I'm like, I think people like that are fucked up, mate. And that's also why, spoiler, you're never going to have a good set of promotion around the ESL Impact League when the people who run it are essentially embittered and they're sort of like, I would say like resentful.
For the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're not doing it for a good reason.
Minutes, they gave me like no reason to even care about ESL Impact League. I was like, why am I watching it? And well, I mean, to be fair, you can see it comes through because what? It was like 20. Okay, so the ESL YouTube channel has 1.4 million subscribers, and the fucking video after 24 hours had less than 4,000 views. It's like, dude, when did they click off? Like, how long did they last in your video that was supposed to be about hyping up the female scene and everything? How long did the average viewer last on that fucking video? So it's just tragic, man. It's just tragic because the reason why I keep coming back to it and the reason why it's just like, it's because it is to me, it's incredibly demeaning for the women competing in this league to be treated in this infantile fashion by this person who's clearly responsible for the vision behind the league. It's like, why not? Do it cool. Make it badass. Just stop this whole victim thing. Nobody cares about cheering for victims. Nobody gives two shits about victims. I want to hear about the badass story. The player who came in and took the world by storm, who kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah, Giuliano, whatever the fuck, their equivalent.
Give me that. Sure. Give me something epic. This whole, we're victims. The world's against us. The world's against everybody. The world's against everybody. So I mean, it's just a losing angle. It's a losing story. Nobody gives a shit about that story, and I hope they change it up for the sake of the league going forward. But I guess, hey, that was our one quick little rant on on the weekly rant. We somehow work back to it the entire time. You know what? Actually, though, I had to like hold myself back from gouging my eyes out earlier because what's going around on Reddit right now is that somebody's fed the top 20 players or like players into an AI thing that turns them into women. And you're just no, why am I seeing this?
It's annoying me that like there's no option to opt out of having AI images just put into my eyes all the time on the internet. It's mental, isn't it?
Everywhere.
Because I've tried really hard to avoid it. Like I've even unfollowed some art accounts that I noticed. Like, because I'll tell you so. I don't know if you've noticed this. Here's how you know, by the way, this art will never be like real human art that was created by an artist. Because I can spot it the second I see it, Semmler. It's never that it looks like real piece of art. I always can tell something like, ooh, something about that looks good. And and if I go into the description, it's going to say like made by Midjourney or something like, and then I'm like, great. It's like, it just has, it has like that uncanny valley thing. There's just something off about it, isn't there? It doesn't matter how good it is, something off about it.
The truly tragic thing though, man, the truly tragic thing about it though, is that fucking like all of them, maybe Alexi B just looked like he put some lipstick on, fine, fair enough. But the one was just I feel so bad for Boomich. It literally just looked like they put a wig on the Boomich and put some glasses on. It's like, there you go. I felt kind of
mad thing is, back in the day, there are actually certain people where they used to just use the face app tool. And I have to say, maybe this one shouldn't surprise anyone, but I can't even lie. If you go back in the day, the one they made of Device, if you remember, mate, he actually unironically was really good looking as a woman. He wasn't he? Do you remember what I'm talking about? Like the joke is it just made his face even better. It's ridiculous. Like, fucking hell, mate. Come on.
Then how can you do that? How can you do that? Not only you're going to be cooming about him in game, you're going to be cooming about him out game. It's just too much cooming. It's all over the place, mate. To use the terms straight bussin' for real. There was that, and like well, I don't even know how to connect the dots on this one, but there was another thing where I was kind of like looking in again this morning on like planned obsolescence and how everything around us is just designed to fail. And it kind of like made me like, there was like this tangent that I was trying to connect the dots on like, are there teams in our scene that are just designed to fail? Like they're going to last a certain amount of time. You know, they're going to last about a certain amount of time. But if you can get what you need out of that team in that certain amount of time, it's all right that it fails because the change is going to come up and you're going to get the hype going again on the change. It's like, how long can you run out a team before, you know,
there's teams are going to burn through their
designed-
cash, put it that way. Like that, like there's people doing that. Like in esports, if people don't know, there's two approaches. You either try to like slowly give up as little equity as possible, but enough to like get the money to still stay competitive with your rivals. Or some people really did try their approach is the head start approach. They've been willing to burn loads of equity and invest money really early to try and be like top of the pile, and then they're just praying for miracles like esports just levels up and shit like that. So there are some big orgs will probably just burn through the cash, I imagine. Yeah,
without a doubt. I mean, everybody's hoping to get into the, you know, to be the next Dallas Cowboys. You got Complexity out there literally trying to run that game right now. But that's, yeah, no, that is it. It was like the whole thing of how like they conspired. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm interested in this because it's always like the ESL cartel that's just been developing and gaining strength more and more. And that now it really is just going to be the ESL and BLAST cartel going forward, the two of them running the shop. But like, it was like how they did with the light bulbs, you know, how planned obsolescence came around when they had the light bulbs and they said, hey, listen, we can make light bulbs that last 100 years, or we can design the light bulbs to fail in like 3 years, and then we'll all sell more light bulbs. And actually you pay a fine if you make a light bulb that's better than our light bulbs, that the cartel has decided, you know, this is the standard for the light bulbs. They last 3 to 5 years. If you make a light bulb that lasts 7 years, then we get to fine you as a cartel. We get to decide, yeah, fuck you, you got to pay more, or something along those lines. And so I was just, I don't know. It's like, could you have that sort of thing going on in CS in a way?
I mean, put it this way, the obvious angle that it could exist, I'm surprised someone hasn't done this yet, is being as in games like League of Legends is the most famous one, because in LEC now, a couple of those LEC slots have been sold for like 2 or 3 times the buy-in. So they've actually made profit in theory. So I'm amazed personally that like people like, yeah, like I know there was a rumors maybe Astralis would be one of the teams this off season that sold their League of Legends spot. If I was someone like Nicola Nyholm and my strategy is get rich quick, I would just make that my actual grift. I would sell the team now, immediately buy in again at a lower price with a different team, build that team up, sell that one, and the joke will be I'm just selling to the greater fool every time, you know. Some guy who's willing to pay me 30-40 million each time. I'll just do that every couple of years.
No one is doing that. That is the Copenhagen Flames business model, isn't it? In CSGO, at least, you know, just find the new players, sell the new players to the next Danish organization that comes along, and then make profit. Be the only team in esports that's actually making a profit. We're the only team in CSGO, at least, sorry, in a like broader sense. Yeah, no, it was just like one of those things that you're kind of kicking around. I mean, Astralis, we did happen to look at their share price again. They were on the downward turn, but they have bumped up a couple of cents. So something's happened behind the scenes at Astralis to get a little bit of interest going in the shares. So a little bit of a bump there. Maybe it's the recent roster change that's actually just been confirmed today. Did you see that news? Buzz getting signed as the 5th, so they've put Mr. back on Astralis talent, and Buzz has now stepped in. I took a gander at his stats on HLTV, and on LAN, he had like on LAN, not playing against any top opponents. No, not even top 30 teams on LAN. So you know, you take what you can get from it. But against top 30 teams, I mean, he's just. I don't know what they're going for here. This is like a total reach, not expected at all. It looks like talks fell through with Stare. Talks fell through. I mean, Config is on the freaking free market, and they're not willing to go back to Config to get him on board. So I guess they really have to say, like, listen, we can only afford to pay a guy maybe like $3,000 a month in salary. Who can we get for that price? Get Buzz. Buzz sounds like a good plan. What did you have any thoughts on that when you saw that news?
Right. The problem here is I've never seen this player play. I don't watch like academy level Counter-Strike, and frankly, I don't care about it. Like, even if you were from an academy like those mouse players, I'll only care when you do it at tier 1. Once you start to do it at tier 1 like they did at that major, now I start to get interested. Okay. So the problem I have is this. It just feels so implausible that the Buzz guy could be anywhere good as either the Stare guy, who does look like he has promise, and there's no chance he's going to be as good as Config, in my opinion. So the problem with this move is I think it just sucks. I mean, to be fair, if you look at at the timing. I'm not surprised at the timing, Semmler, because it's after all that news was made public that because they've signed Device, they've not and let fucking Farley go, they've actually tanked it, so they're not going to be at Katowice now because they didn't understand that like the way you got the last invites for the plane was point based, and it turns out EG and Payne playing in an NA Cash Cup has pipped Astralis, and so Astralis isn't even a playing team for Katowice. So now, being as think about how bad this is. You missed the major, you missed the Blast Fall finals. As a result, you didn't get to the Blast World finals. Then, oh well, at least there's Katowice. No, there's no Katowice. So like the joke is like, mate, when do we next see them fucking play? Like next Blast groups, like Pro League or something like this is pretty bad.
I think.
So to me, the logic here is that's why they've just announced this shitter nobody is the fifth player, because who gives a fuck? They're not playing any tournaments. Like, it's got ages to warm up. They'd probably just play online tournaments again.
Are they going to be like these teams where they're just going to group as 5 and stack FPL or something and just get experience that way? Or what? Are there like weekly cups that they can play in, cash cups or something like in StarCraft? It's like $400 on the line every week. Go ahead.
I mean, there'll be some online tournaments still, yeah.
There's something, but Blast groups mid-January could be the first thing coming up for them. Yeah, that's actually a good point, Vitaly. Maybe Blast comes before Katowice.
It does, but that's because it's just the group, if you remember. Like, it just qualifies you to that, like, the showdown in the playoffs. So that's actually also why that format will never make any sense. Because it's like, oh, look, here we are at the fall finals that you qualified for 2 months earlier. Like, what? Like, that's not a normal tournament. What? You know what I mean? It's just too weird for me. I thought that always jarred a bit.
Yeah, and then Blast Spring as well. You know, hey, you qualified at the beginning of the year, and now we're here at the end of the year. Totally different teams, but that's fine. All good. Doesn't matter.
Now, of course, esports bet, which is your home to bet on pretty much all the major esports you can think of. CSGO, Rainbow Six, Valorant, Dota 2, League of Legends, FIFA, Rocket League. You can go through all the big games. They have their classic first-time deposit bonus of 50% on up to 200 USDT.
We might as well just hop right into Blast Worlds. I mean, that's what happened recently. I know that you've been talking a lot about like the G2 result and everything like that. So I don't want to get you to rehash too much on that. Apart from the fact that we obviously casted the final together, or casted the final. We had a watch party together for the final, and it was pretty decisive victory for G2.
Yeah, it wasn't as good a match as I hoped for. I hoped it was going to be a banger. Yeah.
Yeah, they just dispatched them. It's not even like a close sort of situation. 16-7, 16-12. I mean, just.
Oh, here's my take, Sam. I'll tell you the angle I do want to make, because this is actually, I can advertise another new show that we have on the YouTube channel. If you're watching the VOD, there's also today the second episode of a new series I do with Maui Snake and Kassad called Hot Take Point Made. And the whole premise, Semmler, is you intentionally make the point a hot take. It has to be like some like out there statement, but then you make like a real point and a real analysis. And as soon as you make the real analysis, it obviously like starts to explain away how crazy it sounds, etc. So one of the points I did make on that show, if you go and watch the current episode, is that even though everyone's going to ride the high of how great G2 looked and how awesome it is for Huxley and how Huxley did win in these heroic circumstances where he's had this family tragedy, the problem I have is this, Semmler. I actually think all of those factors are why that result doesn't mean anything, and I actually think it's a bad result for G2 because it might make them keep this lineup. In fact, I'll go ahead and say it. For PR reasons, I think it would be considered PR suicide to cut Huxley after he just won a fucking tier 1 LAN. Now, here's the problem. The point I'll make very briefly, and I'll make it much more in that video, is think about it. Since they already, before the personal tragedy, probably this was going to be the last LAN for Huxley and they were going to cut him, and they've already started to bring in front room staff to change the team, and there's been rumours of they're going to maybe change the IGL. Then on top of that, Huxley has a personal tragedy. I would imagine explicitly the vibe at this tournament was, let's not put any pressure on Huxley. In fact, this lineup might never play again. Let's just play without pressure, guys. Just go out there and have fun. Whatever happens, happens. And it just so happens, maybe that allowed you to have some mad honeymoon effect, as in when you get the new player. You just
precisely what happened.
But the problem here is none of those factors will apply to the next LAN. The next LAN will be a real LAN again. And if they keep the same lineup, which look, I sort of get the vibe that you did win the LAN. You didn't even just make the final, you won it. So like maybe you give them a couple more, but I think it's actually going to bait them just into keeping him longer. And then eventually they'll have to cut him. The problem is though, like think about that, Semmler. It doesn't matter how much you want to win in CS. It's going to be pretty hard optically to sell a tweet where it's like, yeah, you know that guy who just won that massive LAN at the end of last year? He doesn't even get to play another game. He's fired. Like, oh, and also his family just like one of them just died. Like that's pretty hard to sell. So I would even, and you fucking, also let's be real as well. You're G2. Like you can't have any more PR mishaps stops for the next year. Like, you have to just eat this one, I think, unfortunately. But I do think that result will end up being overhyped, unfortunately. Even though it was brilliant and it looked awesome, I just don't believe it can happen again, Semmler. I think it was.
So are you not a believer in Maui's points that Maui has been relentlessly making online, i.e. that Hooksy's some mad caller and he's the big reason why that they were able to unlock the next level potential is because of his mid-round calls, etc. Like, that's
against it.
You don't subscribe to that?
No, here's the problem. I mean, this is another thing we talk about in the episode. I'm not against it, but the problem is this. I mean, we talk about this, me and Kassad almost like confront Maui with it in that episode I'm talking about. The problem here is this. Maui is using the logic of like, you can be a solid top 6 team. Well, our logic is this is literally the end of Nico's prime. He has to win everything now. So being number 6 is shit if you're Nico. If you're G2, being top 5 is all right. If you're Nico, you have to be top 1. That's not, I don't even know why I use the stupid European first. We call it first in English, by the way, everyone. There is no top 1 because how could you be top 1? You'd also be bottom 1 by the same definition. You fucking idiot. There's 1. It can't be a pyramid. It's just 1. So he would be first is the point. So in my opinion, I just don't think it's a good enough squad. Like, m0NESY is so good already. Nico is a fucking insanely good player. Well, just with those 2 pieces alone, you're supposed to contend for every tournament you enter, mate. And you should. You should it with this team.
I mean, with this budget, with the amount of money that they've spent, I mean, 600,000 on m0NESY alone. Then you've got everything that was spent invested into Nico and Hunter and the likes.
It was only 2 years ago they bought Nico for like $1 million or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was only a couple of years ago.
They've put some money into this organization. Actually, did you see, on a tangent, did you see Ocelot tweet, Carlos tweet that he wasn't coming back to G2? Like, it's just not happening. He's not even thinking about it.
Oh, I mean, I already know him. So behind the scenes, like, I was aware. He's basically just like checked out. He's just going to fade off and go do some other shit in real life. I don't blame him because let's be real. Here's the other thing, you know, the kind of demons and ghouls that just tweet horrible shit. The only place they live and matter is Twitter. So they'll be there. And every time you're someone like him and you tweet, I can already tell you, I've had it happen. Someone will just come in. And even though, remember, think about the premise. The premise is they're calling you out as a good person because you're a bad person and you've done bad things. So they always lie, of course. Which is weird because if you'd done the bad things, you just say what they did. But instead of just saying, hey, Carlos, didn't you make a tweet like with Andrew Tate, which would be a fine thing to say, they'll just go, hey, Carlos, I thought you thought all women were property and slit. So they'll just be doing that till the end of time, mate. Like, if you're him, you will never be allowed to even do something good in esports, in my opinion. So you may as well just say it. He already told me he was sort of like a bit tired of it anyway. The challenge had gone. So if I were him, I'd just say, fuck it and go and do a real life business and be a billionaire, mate. Fuck it. He lives in Dubai or whatever. Now he's just fucking chilling.
Twitter really fucks with your head sometimes. I mean, I had this whole experience this weekend where I just shot off one of those tweets where it was like, there was some drone flyover footage of Argentina, like Buenos Aires, where everybody's celebrating and all of that.
Oh, but the World Cup, right?
After like a week and a half of constant news reports of Moroccans rioting all across Europe whenever Morocco wins or loses. They got to set fire to everything. And so I just tweeted, like, not a car fire in sight. Moroccans should take notes. And like my feed has just been full of Moroccans sending me pictures of like, oh, but look, in Morocco, they were like perfectly well behaved and all that. I'm like, yeah, that was never the point. Like, so that's the question is like, to me, that's never the point. I don't care. Like, nobody gives 2 shits about what's happening in Morocco. The real, why are they rioting all across Europe? That's the question. That's what you want answered. It's just like, that's the point of the tweet. But almost all the responses are, but look here in Morocco, they're not rioting here. They're perfect. Like, look at like, what are you talking about? You racist? They're perfectly right. They're perfectly fine here and all that. It's like, yeah, that was never the point. So are you being dishonest? Or are you just that moronic? Like, do you not get the point that I'm making?
The basic problem I have,
are you being actively dishonest?
In my opinion, Twitter changed a few years ago. And the whole point of Twitter now, even though this makes no sense, is it's not right. This person whose tweet I've seen is talking about X. It's I want to talk about Y. So I'm just going to make that the conversation. And they just do that over and over again.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. It's not even a question of
like the joke is they want you to address their shit, even though they're not addressing what you're saying.
Well, I did because the guy said that. So then I was like, okay. So I just sent him a few links of articles, basically like, oh, by the way, unless you're aware, somebody died over this.
By the way, that's also no surprise at all. I can tell you when I used to live in Amsterdam, there was an area, like a sort of suburb area, just up to like, further outside of the center where I was, where all the people from like Turkey and countries like this lived, right? Similar cultures. And all I tell you is every time there was an international football game, they would be beeping the horns and driving the cars and making fucking sound every time, of course. So it wouldn't surprise me. I've no doubt Moroccans are going ham. And also, if you don't know about soccer/football, like that's like a once in a lifetime run for that team. Like Morocco's not some relevant nation. So the idea they made the semis of a World Cup is pretty insane. So I have no doubt they were going absolutely mental, mate, of course.
Oh, it's all over the place. Yeah, no, just by full on riots. Like Paris had to mobilize 10,000 police to make sure that shit, didn't just completely.
To be fair, I will say, Semmler, there are a lot of morons in all sports. Like, for example, one of the maddest ones I've ever heard of in my entire life is LA sports fans. If people don't know, LA sports fans riot and burn things when the team wins.
Yes.
Like I get the story years ago, right, when the Canucks lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup and they all riot, etc. You lost. The LA teams do it when like the Lakers win. When the fucking Kings win the Stanley Cup, they all riot and burn shit down. That's so mad to me.
I remember this actually. Like I do remember there being fucking shitloads of people out in downtown and everything, like all around the Staples Center and all that area. I mean, that is definitely the thing is like, do sports fans riot? Because of course the other one is to come back like, well, what about hooligans? You got hooligans of all types. And it's like, yeah, fair enough. You got hooligans of all types. We're not condoning hooligans here, but we are condoning that there was one specific team in this case. In this instance, it was this one team whose fans seem to be getting out and getting out of hand, repeatedly, not just once, but repeatedly. So, I mean, you got morons in all of, you got morons in all of sports. That's not the point that was being discussed or made. But that's the point that they seem to want to make, which is a bit weird. Whatever. That aside, talking about prize money, there was a little bit of a tweet coming out of this going into the world that I found amusing. Is that Liquid were totally fine with going to compete in the UAE and all of that, but in order to offset the act of them actually competing in this tournament and competing in that region. They decided to take a portion of their prize winnings, the organization that is, and donate it to one of these charities called the Rainbow Railroad. Have you heard of this?
Here's the problem with that, right? Is like, I know why they've called it that name, but that name sounds like, if you think about what the term railroading is, like, what's this organization do exactly? You know what I mean? Like, that's the first thought I did have, but I get that they're using, like, railroad, like it's a journey or whatever. We're going to help them on their journey, I guess is the logic. And
or it's the underground railroad is what they're trying. They're probably,
they might even be hinting at that.
All the way there.
To be fair, bearing in mind their logic would be, because it's how they present the world, like the world is this evil force that wants to destroy and kill all gay people. Yeah, they would probably believe that was the heroic plight that they have. No, the reason why this whole thing is mental is this. I'll actually intentionally use Carlos as a case. So here's how we're all treating, to this day, Carlos Ocelot, who did an overwhelming amount of good for esports, and I personally think didn't even do any bad, just made a tweet people didn't like with someone people didn't like. He didn't even do an act that was bad or in any way harmful to esports or any person in esports. So here's how we treat that guy, a guy who did tons of good things, brought millions of dollars of value to millions of people, well, to pro players and fun and engagement to millions of people around the world. What we do with him is we go, you can't ever even be in esports. If you ever give an opinion, you're a piece of shit, and we'll all tell you that. Don't even come near esports. But then if you're a country which hates gay people, doesn't have any interest in gay people, even basically says gay people not welcome, we will punish you, beat you, suppress you, imprison you. What you do with them, Semmler, is you don't go, well, same precedent, obviously, isn't it? You can't be in esports. We're not going to go there. No. What they do is they go, no, but if we take some of their money and work with them, maybe like we can start to win them over. Wait a minute. You don't want to win Ocelot over. No. Ocelot's done 1 million times more for esports than any Saudi, anyone from Dubai. So you don't want to win him over. No. He gets kicked to one side. But again, Team Liquid magically don't. This is called, by the way, not having the courage of your convictions. Because when everyone says, this drives me fucking crazy. When everyone says, well, if Liquid was to quit the tournament, it would never affect anything. And all they would do is lose money. So like all those Russians that you got the sanctions on then. So like all those guys, you remember, guys, I made this point on the Four Horsemen and people missed it, Semmler. If the sanctions worked, then they would already have stopped the war because Russians won the fucking World Championship of Counter-Strike under a sanctioned name. That is the biggest possible thing that can happen in the calendar, was that 4 Russian players won the World Championship with sanctions applied. So here is my question. How many lives were saved? When is the war ending? It had no effect. Zero.
I don't think it's gonna
Zilch.
stop anytime
So
soon.
so what's stupid is I agree with the premise of Team Liquid. If I was Team Liquid, I'd have just shut the fuck up. I'd have just not tried to imply Texas is some nightmare battleground post-apocalyptic world for gay people, and then sent my pro players, including gay staff members, to fucking this country that you claim is like, it's just a joke. You make a mockery, by the way, of your own cause when you do that. I know people go, no, it's a good thing because they're giving money. It's like, it isn't, is it? Because your own logic is you can't associate with people who are evil unless they have loads of money. And here's the most sinister part, Semmler. When you see that moved on, it becomes even more cynical, because what it sounds like is Team Liquid doesn't really go, look, we can't work with you because you kill gays. They just go, we need our cut. That's what they're basically saying.
That's what it comes out across.
Then what they're saying to all their gay supporters is, I know you're all worried about that, but don't worry, I've got some for you.
Exactly.
That's the vibe. What? And by the way, generally, I think Team Liquid's a cool org, but that's just nonsense. The messaging on that was so whack, especially because, as I say, I know Richard always mentions this, the fact that domestically within the US, the messaging was so differently to this country. It's like, so now you just hate America too. What the fuck is that shit? What's the logic? You know what I mean?
It's just always, I mean, there's not one peep out of it. I mean, sure, you know, like as expected, Cadian didn't wear the rainbow armband either. Of course not. Probably didn't even cross his mind.
Yeah, fair enough.
That was never going to happen. Perfectly reasonable to do that in Denmark, of course, where you risk nothing and that is you getting brownie points. The same way that these orgs relentlessly virtue signal anywhere in the West because it's safe ground. Of course you can. You're going to get all your pats and all of your, you know, great points. The one that I loved was the fucking meme because as it happens, one of the top responses to this post was literally somebody who works in the Liquid.
Oh yes, I saw this.
Who works in the Liquid PR team or something like that in the social media side. And so somebody did the meme where it's Obama giving himself the medal.
I think it was Richard
because he's probably the guy who wrote.
I think Richard actually did it. Yeah, he did the one where it's because if people can't remember, it was originally like Obama giving Biden, I think, that presidential medal or something, but they made it Obama giving Obama.
Biden, yeah, I think. And then they made it.
Because the joke is that guy did do that tweet almost like when, you know, people forget to log out of their account and just be like, brilliant initiative. I love the way this is like, you are Team Liquid, you fucking idiot. What are you talking about? Like, I know,
you're so probably the guy who wrote the fucking post to begin with.
I know.
It's so good. So it's just that, dude. I mean, it's endless. It's endless. It's just so fucking amusing to see all of that play out.
And by the way, I'll give you a little tidbit that only I can do because I have a memory like this. When I did a show a couple of years ago in 2020 with I Will Dominate, who for a long time was in Team Liquid as a pro player, he told a story about how when they went to Korea, one of the staff people who was with them was gay. And even in Korea, where they just sort of look down on gay people, they're not really particularly like discriminatory. They just told him, oh, don't mention anywhere that you're gay. So Team Liquid themselves as an org even has a history of hiring these people. So like, it's not even like they're just doing it as an abstract cause, dude. That means there might be someone within this org who's having to go, well, swallow my pride, as it were, and I'll just have to go to this country. Like, that's mental. Because at that point in time, here's the other reason I hate that kind of angle. Because I know how these people are. After this event, they'll still turn around and go, you did a tweet, get out of it. It's not like they've shifted where their goalposts are, like, permanently. They're just going to shift them back to make the same case against me and you, mate, of course.
No, and there's no standards like that. You don't. And speaking of which, actually, okay, that can get us into this next topic because that's what I was kind of curious about when this 4 Horsemen episode came out on the State of CS. And I noticed that in the description, it mentioned that there would be receipts for people who said that they wouldn't work with Neom, you know, that they threw shade at Blast.
You said there would be receipts. I think I just said people were good doing events in a tweet.
Okay, no, it was in the description. There was something about receipts being shown.
Oh,
and I was curious about like, oh shit, okay, is there like receipts or not? And turns out, as it happens, of course there is. And so, just for the sake of looking at it, I was just like, because I'm not, you know, it's just it is what it is, and I want to point it out, and I just want to keep this fresh in a sense because it's just like, okay, out of curiosity, who did actually?
Oh, look, Semmler, let me put it this way. In case people feel like you're being mean right now, Semmler, the people he's about to call out called out Blast on moral grounds. So logically, they have it's totally within the realm of reasonability to call them out, Semmler, when they themselves prove they don't believe in what they said.
It's like, it's not even calling them out as in like, I'm going to like,
no, just referencing that it happened
tomorrow or some
this
shit.
Is
like,
public
I don't care
record.
if they fucking keep doing. Like, the thing is that if anything, this is just a further example of how, if you're not prepared to put up with the principles, then just don't make any of these kinds of moral judgments public. Don't do it at all. And to be fair to Moses, he didn't. He wrote a private email, which is what we're going to read an excerpt from here. But to the others who went out on Twitter,
he did also leak that email, to be fair. But yeah, go on.
But the email did get leaked. True. And it was just this one line from an email. So Moses CSGO BLAST Neom criticism. He wrote an email to BLAST, essentially lambasting BLAST, because at the time, if people don't remember, BLAST were staying very fucking quiet when all of the Neom heat was blowing, almost as if they were trying to hope that it would just blow over. Some new drama would come along and they wouldn't actually have to say anything publicly about it. And so there were quite a few of us who actually weren't saying anything because we're professionals. And so we were just curious to see like where this goes and what they're going to do. Anders, myself, Moses, we didn't do anything public about it. We had private conversations, and Moses sent out an email to BLAST at one point where it was, you are allowing other, quote from the email. That's a long email. You can read it. The links, oh, by the way, the links are all going to be beneath here in the description in case you're interested in these sorts of things. You want to look at what we're talking about. Remember, the links are all in the description so you can see what it is that we're talking about. But the link to the email, an excerpt from that email is, you are allowing others to take the heat for a deal. So this would be the deal with Neom that most of us know nothing about, do not agree with, and flat out despise. And so that was that one point where it's like, okay, flat out despise working with a company like Neom, and yet present at Abu Dhabi, present at with the Arab Emirates here today, alongside BLAST, working this event in the same region with cousins, so to speak. So that was one. The other that I found, and that was the timing worked out perfectly because Harry wouldn't have been included in this, apart from the fact that Harry does work with ESL, and ESL is his main breadwinner, and so he's here at Blast Worlds as well. He got called in at the last second because Anders came down with a cold, couldn't make it out, and so Harry, flew in. But there was a tweet from Harry as well, where he said, being off Twitter for a good while, BLAST x Neom is a disgrace to the BLAST brand. An organization I know is filled with wonderful, talented, and loving individuals. The idea that this could be silenced through ignoring it is not a standard or precedent that should be set either. I join my friends and colleagues in saying that I won't be working with BLAST while this partnership stands. This isn't an issue that will simply be forgotten about. I deeply admire the courage of those with ties to BLAST who spoke up against this early on. You aren't alone. Well, he does work with ESL. He did work with BLAST this time around, and turns out it wasn't forgotten. You're right, Harry. It wasn't
here's
forgotten.
Here's the thing.
The internet's
it's
forever.
Worse than that. Much like Frankie, here's the problem, Harry. I'm looking at your page right now on Wikipedia that lists all the events you work. Are you ready for the kicker? Harry didn't work with BLAST before that. As far as I can tell. Oh, no, he did. He worked at BLAST Moscow. He did one, it looks like. Aside from that, it looks like he did one small BLAST a year prior. Right? The problem is, just like Frankie, that looks like what you did there was, you said, oh, not going to hire me for your events. What's that?
Then I won't work with you.
There's a scandal going on. I'm just going to tie you to that publicly with my brand. Oh, later on. Oh, you want to hire me? No problem with me then, mate. Well, when do I arrive? When do I arrive? Give me a break. That's the point. That's what, by the way, that looks like if you're Harry. You did that, mate, not me. So if you're mad at that, go look in the fucking mirror and get mad at him, mate. You did that. We never told you to put yourself on the line there. Because, yeah, he was at World Finals. So there's one for you.
There's one.
And spoiler, also works with ESL, as you say, with the Saudis.
Works with ESL, who are now directly working, who are directly owned by that same organization. So there is a thing now where it's like you can't get away from this in Counter-Strike anymore. If you're going to work at BLAST or ESL, the two tier 1 tournament organizers, that's it. You have to be willing to work with this kind of organization. And so the classic Frankie tweet, the BLAST x Neom deal is an opportunity to educate ourselves so that we no longer work with people who would kill our friends. Classic throwback. Worth mentioning, obviously.
If you wonder where she's
I
at,
bring that one up, it's because she just worked at ESL Impact.
Yeah, but here's her excuse. Are you ready? Even though in the tweet the standard was we should educate ourselves to not work with people who would kill our friends. If you wonder where she's at on an update, she says all that's changed is the shareholder. That's for real her answer. Now, here's the thing. I won't go into how, but you'll find out soon. Basically, Richard told me that she knows she fucked up on that and she shouldn't have phrased it that way. But here's the problem. You did. Still did happen, though, didn't it? So unless you got a flux capacitor, shit out of luck, aren't you?
Indeed, indeed. Let's see. There was
There's a
a
couple
couple
more.
more here. Hugo did have his moment as well. Had to go down with his homie, with his teammate. So he retweets Harry, and he says, "If you don't support human rights, then I can't support you. Blast partnering with Neom does not align with what they claim to stand for. I stand by Harry, my colleagues, and every person who has been persecuted by archaic governments for being themselves."
He's done himself. He's done himself again.
That's such a broad one too, because holy shit.
Oh, he's fucked himself. Yeah. By the way, by that logic, he can now also never work with China.
There you go.
Or even the USA. You know what? If you want to go mad, USA can't work with. They bomb the fuck out of people all the time.
The UK. You got a broad thing. Who just spent 2 years, 2.5, whatever years, locking the citizens up into, like that's a little.
You'd have to narrow that one down. That could be Australia.
Little bit We're just gonna go down this with such a broad, persecuted. I would say that we got persecuted by these archaic governments, but okay, fair enough. We can have a discussion on the topic. But that's a pretty wide net to cast. But okay, fair enough, Hugo. And the other one that I had, which was amusing, is because there was obviously, of course, if you don't remember back then, there was also the Neom deal with League of Legends. And so you had some of the League of Legends people who were getting on board with that sort of thing. And so there was a tweet from Shocks, who just happened to work IEM Rio, who was run by BLAST in Brazil.
ESL.
Run by ESL, who work with Neom. I am terribly disappointed. And so I wonder if she's terribly disappointed at herself today for working with ESL in Rio. I guess you had to get to Brazil, man. We had to get to Brazil. So that was I just wanted to go through those again, because it is just, the internet is forever in a way. There you go.
For people who don't know, I also said I wouldn't work with Blast if they did it with Neom. Spoiler, I haven't. And wouldn't. So there you go.
That is true. I didn't include you in this because you haven't. You've actually, stood by what you said. So
that's why people don't get it. I don't consider that shit a game, by the way. When you say that, it's like I did with ESL, where I said I won't work with them till they get rid of the people that did the fucking slot stealing. I know when I say that, by the way, that is like burning the ships and knowing you are never going home on the ships again. Like, you just have to live in the new world now. Like, but that's the cost that I was willing to pay. I was like, actually, I think this is a valid point.
Mm-hmm. That is actually like one of those concepts that needs to make a comeback, where it is just like, it's not, oh, well, times have changed or whatever. It's like, no. Once upon a time, you landed the ships on the beach and you burned the ships and you said, we either establish ourselves here and make progress or we die trying. Sometimes you have to have principles like that you're willing to go the distance for. That's the issue with the internet as it stands right now, is that it's much more convenient to just say dumb shit willy-nilly and expect people not to remember. And so that's kind of the point of the exercise here. It's just to say, the internet does remember, and let's just take a quick gander back and see, who said what.
I've got a point to make here, because I actually think the most egregious thing about this situation isn't just that these people virtue signaled and then literally took money from literally the same people that they virtue signaled about not working with. It's worse, Semmler. Here's the maddest part of all. The reason they don't just do a tweet apologizing and saying they were wrong is because to do so would also expose that they never really meant what they originally said. So none of them are going to do that. That's why you notice there is no tweet. There's no Harry tweet. There's no Sharks tweet. There's no Frankie tweet. They don't do that, because one thing they can never do is walk back the virtue signal. Somehow that is the most important thing in all of this, if you think about it. Because that's the other thing, right? It'd be so easy, Semmler, if you were someone who just genuinely, earnestly believed it, but then you realize, actually, I didn't think this through. I can just never work in esports if I do this. So actually, I've had to change my position, even though maybe I didn't want to. I'm sorry to anyone I let down, especially anyone it seemed like I was standing for, but actually, to work in the industry, I'm going to have to make concessions. If someone said that, by the way, I'd almost respect it. At least you're being honest. At least you're sort of showing, hey, I've had to change my mind. Maybe I went too far. No, they do want to have their cake and eat it, mate.
No, but that's the thing. That is one thing that I will not, that I won't give up on, in the sense that if somebody, like forgiveness and mercy, it is possible, right? Like if somebody actually changes their mind, because people change their mind. Like sometimes you get new evidence and you change your mind, you change your perspective on something. It's not like I'm gonna just beat them over the head and say, well, this one tweet from 10 years ago, you obviously must completely agree with this position. You can't possibly have changed your opinion at all. I mean, that's not something that I got on board with. If somebody actually wants to say, like, listen, I was wrong. I was in the wrong on this. I fucked up, or I learned something new about this situation. And if somebody were to say that, then I'd be like, okay, fine, fair enough. Moving on. It's not, oh no, you're forever pinned like an insect in an insect collection. You're pinned to the wall, to the board on that position. You're never allowed to change on that position again. I don't know. I'd be willing to have that kind of discussion. It's not that it's like what we talked about in the past, right? Where one of those things is that today that's making things so tense for this reason is because today everything is permissible, but nothing is forgiven, right? So you can do everything, but if you cross that line, that's it. Not forget you're impossible to seek forgiveness. There's no mercy.
I even think, by the way, you should even give a level of gradation for how egregious what they did was. Like, I'll give you an example. Harry actually working the event is way less egregious than Frankie or Shock's working it, because Harry his full-time job is he is a professional fucking play-by-play commentator in Counter-Strike. So there's only 2 major companies you can work for. Frankie can do any game she wants and has tons of offers all over the place. She's not even doing it for a big event. If people don't know, she didn't do the major. She's doing it for the stupid ESL Impact League. And then Shocks is the most egregious of all, because I've heard the stories of what Shocks' day rate is and all the media opportunities she has, even outside of esports. She doesn't need for money, mate. She doesn't have to do this to feed her dog or a cat. She has a cat, but she could choose to not do it. So in that scenario, why are you making such a big deal about it? And then just being like, well, I'm not going to say no to the money. It's like, well, then what was all of this about? It's just nonsense.
Yeah, just nonsense at the end of the day. One thing that isn't nonsense, that's going to be the last topic, unless we have more on this Blast world, is that Blast itself. Remember that Blast is one of the points that I made about Blast being so resilient in the past is that they are pulling directly from public funds, from taxpayer money in Denmark, and they are directly funded in a portion by the Danish state. And so it would appear that is actually going to be or it could potentially be an issue for them going forward here, because it looks like the growth fund co-owns a company in a large Abu Dhabi collaboration. Danish taxpayers should not contribute to that. So a Danish organization, which is Blast, which is publicly funded, is holding a major esports tournament in Abu Dhabi. Pardon me?
So what is the logic? Like Denmark, the country.
The logic is that you have a publicly funded company now, Blast, and apparently this fund that this public money fund that is run by the Danish government apparently owns between 20 to 30% of Blast, right, after having invested at least $10 million. If
people don't understand the difference between ESL's situation here and the Blast one is ESL is no longer a public company. It is privately owned, much like Twitter is by Elon Musk. It's owned by that Saudi group, so it's different. What Semmler's saying is this: technically, anyone who just lives in Denmark and pays tax, you could argue their money is going towards this Abu Dhabi group in some circuitous manner that holds in the event.
The millions come, among other things, from Vækstfonden. I'm probably butchering that, but Vækstfonden, a state investment fund, which in 2018, together with 2 private funds, invested about $10 million into Blast. According to CVR, the growth fund currently holds between 20 to 30% of the company. And so this is potentially going to be a spicy issue for Blast, because there could be the fact that obviously now again it's like, well, you're operating in this region that is a tyrannical region run by tyrannical governments, and Danish taxpayers shouldn't be supporting that. If you want to go and work there, do it with private money. But as soon as you take public money, i.e., taxpayer money, then you're going to be held to certain standards. And so it seems like that is going to be the rub going forward. Is that there could be potential issues between government, state policy, Blast, how Blast are spending their money, etc. So we'll have to keep an eye on it, because imagine if there was actually something serious behind this, i.e., Blast had to restructure or do something crazy. 20 to 30%, coming up with $10 million. Do you have to refund the money to that fund? What's the play? You have to buy back that portion of the ownership somehow, find the money, find new owners or something that are going to be able to buy them out, so that you are then free to work with Abu Dhabi without any issue. It's going to be an issue, because you're basically, the Abu Dhabi gaming organization is run by the Arab Emirates state. It is also one of those government organizations that's heavily tied to the government. So now you have an organization that's partially owned by the Danish government that's working directly with an organization that's partially owned by the Abu Dhabi government, the Arab Emirates. So it'll be worth the while to keep an eye on this because that seems like that could be spicy territory for Blast. It could definitely make things a lot more difficult for them in the coming year if they actually have to try and change their structure.
Makes me wonder then, actually, can they even be bought like ESL? I wonder if that's allowed. Maybe if they just don't accept, maybe if they don't get any Danish tax money anymore. I
guess what you would do is you would get private money to come in and buy out whatever that fund has. And so the fund gets its money back, and then there you go. You lose the public side of things, and then it's all private. And from there, it'd be like ESL. Who cares? You're privately owned at that point. So let's see. The growth fund's approach as a financial partner is based on dialogue and cooperation. Let's see. Yeah. So that was just one thing that popped up today that was kind of interesting to keep an eye on. So we'll have to see going forward if Blast are going to be in hot water or if they're going to be able to navigate through this. All right. Some other news. Now we're going to get into some of the miscellaneous stuff that's been popping up lately this week. One thing, and I'm very curious I'm very curious to hear if there is going to ever, we'll probably never get to the bottom of the reason for it, apart from like the baseline surface level narrative of, let's say, virtue signaling brownie points. I don't know. Na'Vi have just announced, or at least Electronic and Perfecto have announced that they want to compete under neutral flags and not Russian flags going forward into 2023. And so remember how we were talking about this in the past where the Na'Vi organization, they basically excised all Russian players and individuals from their organization and said that they did not want to work with anybody based in Russia.
They claimed they did, but they never actually did it. Yeah.
Well, they didn't go through with it with Electronic and Perfecto.
Well, they also kept apparently some of this staff, I believe. And
indeed. Okay, then.
I think Richard mentioned something like that. Like, I don't think they did actually kick everyone out. I think they kept a couple of people.
That would be news then, because they definitely got rid of a few Russians.
They did, but they did it in a cynical way. Like, I heard they sort of did it where it's like if they just wanted to get rid of you or not pay you, they just fired you, basically.
It's like the perfect example. It's like the perfect excuse. They're like, dude, we really don't want to be paying this guy anymore, but it may look bad if we get.
It's a perfect reason to do it, though.
That would be how they do it. Holy shit. Okay, well then at that point, if that's the case, then that kind of changes the dynamic of the picture, doesn't it? Because then it's not so much.
First thing I thought when I saw this story was I can't even take this at face value that Perfecto and Electronic of their own volition wanted this, because it's Na'Vi, and Na'Vi has so heavily played into the war story, let's say, of like, we have to get all Russians out, sanctions on Russia, Russia is bad, can't pay the money. Well, obviously the problem, which has been mentioned many times by Richard, is even though they talked a good game way back in February about, these guys will just move to Serbia and all those countries and it'll be okay because they'll get rid of being Russian. They clearly haven't done it. So instead, this to me is the response you do, since they're not going to move country and go to Serbia or some other country. What you do instead is you go, they don't even claim they're Russian anymore. Joke being, you've almost in some way actually figured out the Gordian knot solution there, because in the modern day, just claiming what you identify as is the physical reality. That's actually sort of like a next level fucking checkmate move by the Na'Vi org, but I don't think they intentionally did it. The reason why this is very sinister to me goes like this, right? If people don't know, the reason why the classic swastika Nazi flag is obviously something that would be incredibly offensive to show in the modern day is because that was the actual symbol of that regime in Germany. Remember, the German flag is a very different flag, isn't it? So here's the difference. If you use that flag, you are expressly saying, I sort of fuck with that regime. If you just show the classic Russian flag, which on HLTV org, this is a key thing, isn't even the one with all the big ego. It's just the 3-color flag. It's the 3 colors we've all seen for years and years. Now, that goes historically back hundreds of years. That was before the Soviet time. That was even before, apparently, Alexander II or something. That is a flag that's existed in the 1800s and the 1700s, Semmler. So as a result, that flag doesn't represent Putin or the idea of invading Ukraine or Novorossiya. It doesn't represent any of those things. It just represents Russia. So this is one of those areas where I think it becomes sinister, mate, because now it's look, the player himself can say this, I just don't want the flag. That's no big deal. But you are almost implying even now the Russian flag is evil. what? How far are we going to go with this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does it never end? Like, next, we're not allowed to have like a bear as a logo or something. What, you know, how far are we going to go? Is my point. And again, I'll just say it for the millionth time. I get why they might do it. Like, if I'm Electronic and Perfecto, by the way, one of the best reasons to do this is just to stop the dickheads who never stop tweeting about it. That's one reason you might give in and do it. But again, I'll just say this: not a single life will ever be saved because Perfecto and Electronic changed their flags. You know, just gonna say it like that.
Nothing to it. I mean, it feels like it's it's such a weird situation because now it's like arbitrarily good and bad sides have been picked, and so if you're on the wrong side, that's it. It's over. Also, you know, this is also kind of catering to a group of people who these social media denizens who, for them, you know, it's just, oh, it's you know, what borders? That's just a line on a map. You know, we're global citizens, we're cosmopolitans, we travel all over the place, and blah blah blah. Right? Like, what's a nation? You know, no national pride at all. But it really matters all of a sudden that you come from Russia. Can't have that. You know, Russia. You know, it's like, it really does feel like it's the hollowing out of any value, and it feels really weird to see that kind of thing happen here in esports, where, I mean, it is. I mean, esports used to be a thing where you didn't really care. It was a bit of a cosmopolitan exercise in the sense that the internet made it so that international, it didn't care. It didn't matter where you're coming from in that sense. It just feels so weird. So yeah, no, you're right. Demeaning. That Electronic and Perfecto are,
it's like
are
a
ones
humiliation
who are arbitrarily
ritual.
being forced to do this.
It's like you just, what you're doing. By the way, this actually ties into something I do think is going on here as a phenomenon, Semmler. The phenomenon is this: there are people who are only on the internet, like you say, who are not physically participating in this war. Maybe they're indirectly through giving money, and they think, Semmler, they're LARPing like they are a combatant in the war. And so what they think is this: they just want to hurt any Russian that comes into their sphere. So if they can't themselves fight in the war, by the way, maybe could go and sign up, but apparently they don't want to, they're just tweeting. So instead, if they can somehow fuck with outsiders players, if they can annoy Electronic and Perfecto, if they can tell them, oh, tell you to cry it and do that, then that's their, they think that's their helping the war effort. I think really believe it's like a way to assuage their own inaction, if you know what I mean.
How is this not different from posting black squares or
it's the same shit, basically?
Right? How is this any different from any other fad on the internet?
What's sad as well, by the way, is I even didn't think this was what it actually is at first. When I first heard like Electronic, I think it was Perfecto I heard, once his like flag changed, I thought it was like an example people might know from back in the day, which is the old player Kucha, who for most of the time I knew him in 1.6 when he played with people like Angel and stuff in those teams. He used to always have the Ukrainian flag on, right? But then I noticed when he was in Hellraisers in CSGO, he had the Russian flag on, and I was like, what? And it turns out he's one of those people who is from Crimea, and so at the time his family was dual citizenship, so he could choose which one he was, and I believe now he chose to go back to like Ukrainian one or whatever. I thought it was like that. I thought, oh, maybe Electronic, you know, his granddad is from Ukraine, and he can get he's just going to change to Ukrainian. But when I found out, no, it's that they're just erasing the flag and they're just not a flag. It's like, what even is this exercise? You know, again, like I say, if they want to do it, fair play, they can do whatever they want, but I just think this is, again, just a nonsense exercise. I don't think this materially does anything, and I don't think it doesn't help morale. It doesn't like encourage people to battle Russia. Exactly. It doesn't do any of that stuff, does it? It just means these guys don't have a flag.
This can just continue to breed resentment. And this is already, you're already talking about this Na'Vi roster getting their prime for this roster robbed from them because of all of these circumstances of which they had no control over. But now it seems like it's only going to get to get worse, because if Simple is behaving the way that he is online with these social media posts, if that's bleeding in, already it might have been a tense year. But now if you're going to have back and forth and you're going to add the Ukrainian Russian thing into the mix, I mean, why is it that that like at this point, like watching the players walk out, it is weird to me to see the Ukrainians all wearing their flag and their teammates. Like, I don't know, if you're a teammate, maybe not wear, like if your teammate can't wear his flag because arbitrarily we've decided that's bad verboten. Why wear your flag? Why not show some compassion? I don't know what's the word I'm looking for right now.
It's like a shared common human,
some common ground with your teammate. I don't know. Esprit de corps, you know, like show some esprit de corps with your teammate, and
team spirit. That's a good time.
Team spirit, not make it this thing. But it feels like it was really weird watching this major where it's like, okay, we're calling them outsiders, we're not calling them Virtus Pro, and everybody else can wear a flag, but not those players. Definitely not those players. They can't show any national pride because showing national pride would obviously mean that they sign off completely on everything that Putin's doing right now. It's like, come on, it's so tiresome, this empty, hollow bullshit. Can we move on and let the players
also,
play?
mate, you should know this from America, particularly. I've always thought the silliest notion ever is the people, Semmler, who are like left-wing protesters in America, so they burn the flag. It's like, bro, if you are the patriot, the joke is you should think of the flag as you and the government as the enemy. Not the joke is you're supposed to be like, you've illegitimately taken my flag and used it for something it doesn't represent. Like, so if anything, having the flag, as far as I'm concerned, just represents, like you say, like the country of people. It doesn't necessarily represent the war effort. I will say, I get why you phrased it that way. I also thought the same thing. Like, I thought to myself, if I was an RV player, the reason I wouldn't wear the Ukrainian flag is just because, even though, look, you might totally disagree with the reasons, in theory, this flag also kills their people, surely. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, soldiers who were in battle, I mean, you might know because of mobilization, you don't even have a choice now. Like, some people are just press ganged into war. Like, that doesn't mean that person is evil, whatever ends they're having a battle in. So I agree, though, that I don't think this is the problem with this topic. Obviously, if they were coming out at big events wearing a massive Russian flag, you could say that might be incendiary. We're just talking about HLTV posts, guys. That's not really that big a deal. It's not the same, is it? It's a tiny little, like, 96 by 96 pixel fucking tiny little 3 colors, isn't it? It's not in any way showing support for someone, but whatever. Just another fucking spinning our wheels like every week of esports. Notice again, nothing tangibly material ever accomplished in these scenarios.
No, of course not. But it's that little it's that drip feed, you know. Maybe you were getting a little low. You needed your hit. You needed something. You needed a taste, and so that was what got you that little endorphin kick. Was making them not be able to have their flag. So fine, fair enough. The other one actually that from the region before we move on to more international stuff, but VP they decided to bring in the ES Force head to become their new CEO. So Virtus Pro talking about distancing themselves a little bit with new management, et cetera, new ownership, right? So that they could go ahead and continue to operate in the Western Sphere. And so for that reason, Virtus Pro have their logo back in Dota. ESL and BLAST are arbitrarily deciding to not allow that to happen here in CS. But that was one bit of news that came up that was interesting to keep an eye on, as well as that ES Force was one of those organizations in Russia that was tied to the oligarchs, and now they've gone ahead and brought one of these guys in to run Virtus Pro. So there are still ties, of course. There's still ties with Virtus Pro as a Russian organization to the old system. So
to be fair, Semmler, the Virtus Pro one was always very complicated because that one wasn't even about being Russian. It was about the notion that an oligarch has connections with Putin himself. Because if you don't know the Uzmanov guy, that was like the guy who owns ES Force and all that, he's actually from Uzbekistan, I believe. It's just that he had like some sort of relationship with Putin. So that wasn't even about being Russian. Like, it's more the idea, do you have a connection? So yeah, I mean, as usual, it's like, listen, it was obvious what was going on. It was just a level of abstraction to be allowed to do business again. My problem is this. I think it's hypocritical as fuck that all these Westerns are like, how dare they just put one layer of abstraction? That's all you cocksuckers are doing. So why aren't they allowed to do it? You know what I mean? Why are they allowed to get away with
50% of their revenue to Rainbow Road or Rainbow Railroad or whatever the fuck? That's got to cross that line when they come to it. All right, moving on. Valve update the major with closed qualifiers. Did you see that? Did you see that little bit? That's been out for a little bit now, so that's going to be interesting how they've gone ahead and updated it. But the real juicy nugget that just dropped actually is the fact that Valve have gone ahead and actually revealed some information about how they're going to set up their regional standings. So this was something that was brought up when they talked about the major closed qualifiers, is that there would be invites for those closed qualifiers. That the open qualifiers would feed into the closed qualifiers that then feed into the RMRs, and you go from there. But of course, how do you determine the invites? And so were they going to be using HLTV? Were they going to use ESL? Valve have said in the past that they don't want to use third-party systems, that they don't want to endorse a third-party ranking system. And so that's why they didn't have a ranking system or invites. Well, to address that issue now, Valve have gone ahead and have unveiled, their first ranking system and kind of given you some information as to how the whole thing works. So I'll go ahead and read here. The developers have revealed that the ranking is based on 3 factors: a team's prize money earned, their beaten opponent's prize money earned, and teams beaten, and head-to-head results. So of course Valve have come up, Valve speaking Valve, basically focusing on the money. So naturally that's the perfect way for them to do things, is to just focus on the money.
Fucked it. Yeah, they fucked it right out the gate. Brilliant.
And the exact formula will be public in the coming weeks. So they are going to reveal the exact formula as to how all of this gets calculated. So you'll be able to calculate stuff and double check and make sure that there's no curmudgeonry going on. But there was a side-by-side that was put up by Dust2 US. Decent bit of information, i.e. putting a side-by-side comparison of HLTV's top 30s with Valve standings and ESL world rankings.
Do you want me to give you immediately?
And it wasn't totally wildly off, at least at a glance, not wildly off. But okay, let's hear it.
I'll give you immediately a reason this is bad.
Okay.
So do you remember, like, when Heroic won Blast Fall Finals, they actually had won another LAN that year. Did you know that? Because no one knows this. They won a tournament that was in Sweden. It was in June. It was called the Pinnacle Championship. It was a LAN.
Holy moly.
Are you ready? First place for that LAN was $150,000. So what they've now done with this stupid system, Semmler, is you're now incentivized to farm tournaments like that because you'll just get points. Remember, prize money factors into this. Well, if you don't know, 150K, I think first place in ESL Pro League is at 175K. So you just go, you beat Astralis big and finesse.
That is a salient point.
This is why when you make systems, I've explained this a million fucking times, but no one listens. That's why I'm esports and y'all just watch esports. Because what you do when you make a system is you first of all think, what am I selecting for? Like, what would the best team in the world be? What would be the metrics? Now, prize money wouldn't be it, Semmler, because this isn't like a circuit like Formula One where we all play at every stop. If that was the case, you could do something like that. Instead, prize money, we all know in Counter-Strike, famously, WESG, there used to be like 600K for first place for that, which is way more than like a DreamHack Masters. But which do we care about more, WSG or DreamHack Masters? Obviously, it was DreamHack Masters. So that's a flaw already. And the reason I hate this is the first thing you would do when you put a system like that is you don't have to launch it. You can try some test runs, can't you? You put in a few different people's data and you go, does that seem off? Does that seem like where they were this year? They didn't do it. As usual, you just make it. And sadly, every ranking system does this. You make some shitty ranking that hasn't been thought through. You push it out the door and you wait for me to do your quality control, and you wait for the community to do your quality control, and you wait for someone to write an article and someone to compare it and someone to explain to you, the person who owns Counter-Strike, why what you've done doesn't make sense. Like, why not just do it right from the beginning, you fucking idiots? You know?
They don't have a public beta tester. You know, they don't test things because nobody would do the testing anyway, so they'd rather just push everything live and then see how it goes, right? You know, nobody remembers a certain revolver.
I will agree though, if you look at the comparison image, like it looks close enough that it's probably, put it this way, this should still be way better than the old system we had of just playing RMRs and qualifying. It should be way better than that. It should just be way better than that.
That was the takeaway that I had when I took a glance at it, was that, I mean, it's like you're still in the same wheelhouse. You're still in the same ballpark of standings. You know, you're maybe off a couple here or there. You know, like Vitality, for example, are 10th on HLTV, whereas they're ranked 7th on Valve standings. So you know, you're off by like 2 or 3 slots, but you're still in the general vicinity. And in the top, I mean, ESL are smoking crack. They've got Liquid as the second best team in the world. But you know, Heroic is still number 1 across all 3 of these. And Outsiders in G2 are just changing spots between 2nd and 3rd, between HLTV and Valve. So, you know, I mean, at a glance, it seemed like it could work. But that's it's actually a fantastic point that you make, in the sense that you could actually just nip out, grab a quick tournament, you know, just show it, just be a top 5 team. Maybe you need to make sure that you're really guaranteeing it. You hop out, you win a quick tournament, make an extra $100,000, add that to the tally, and move on. That could be really. Do you think actually?
This way, remember what I said about Astralis? This example already happened.
This could be a good thing, though.
Well, it could also be bad, though. Like, for example, think of what I said about Astralis, where the reason Astralis isn't going to be at Katowice is because Evil Geniuses and Pain played in NA Cash Cup and finished top 4. an unrelated tournament. Neither Astralis can't even enter that in a Tash Cup. They're not from NA. So the problem here is this, Semmler. If someone's very shrewd, like, look, I doubt it's as simple because it contains multiple factors, not just prize money. It's not as simple as, you play this tournament, you automatically get more. But there probably will be ways to finagle it. Like, if I'm the team on the border of getting into, like, an invite spot, maybe I can look, like you're saying, on this calendar and go, ooh, there is a tournament 2 weeks before, though, that's in, like, wherever, Dubai. It's got 100K. It's got a couple of tier 1 teams. Maybe I go and win that, and that gets me in. Now, you could argue maybe that one day could actually break the ESL BLAST monopoly. Yeah, maybe that could be good. But
that's the
in the
point.
short term, I could see people, especially if you're a big org with the money, that's also a clever way you can just sort of ensure you qualify, maybe.
I guess the way potentially to counter this is that they're beating opponents as prize
That's
money
good.
earned.
I like that a lot.
Right, so that could be the way that they're trying to balance it out, where it's like, if you go and get that tier 2 money, well, you're playing against tier 2 opponents, so sure, you're gonna
get points though. You will still get points. That's my point.
You're still
but here's the thing:
not as much.
That's actually a way better factor though, because one thing I hate is when, like, if you notice, when I used to do my world ranking, that's why I would put which ranked opponents they beat during that time span, because I do think it's not about placing; it's about who you beat as well. Like, placings are all right, but if you have some powder puff run, and who gives a fuck? Whereas if you actually beat like this G2 win, mate, they beat some really good teams to win this fucking land. They should get good points for that.
That is the big the takeaway from this that I have following all of this is that this could actually be the way for TOs to actually entice tier 1 teams to come and compete in their tournaments, because otherwise what's the motivation for any of the tier 1 teams to compete outside of ESL and BLAST? Probably nil. It's like you're just going to be focusing on
it's just if you don't qualify, that's all it is, as far as I can tell. Like, as far as I know, the reason the Pinnacle was a tournament that someone like Heroic was going to with smaller teams is because they probably at that point in time, like, just had some time off, and they hadn't done well in a bunch of, like, hadn't done well in Pro League or some shit like that, something like that. I can't remember what order it was in. I think it was just after IM Dallas, maybe.
It's not gonna be the easiest thing to get that sort of thing done in the future, regardless. I mean, the calendar is so full now between BLAST and ESL and the majors. Between those three factors, finding any time at all to compete in other tournaments, man, it's a fucking it's a struggle by the looks of things. So this is that was one of the I mean, we'll obviously be keeping an eye on it, because this is going to be what determines how things work out for the BLAST Paris major that is coming up at the beginning of next year, or beginning May. But yeah, this is definitely something we got to keep an eye on. So interesting to see that Valve are going to be taking more of a hand in things, because they've said themselves in the past that they just don't want to involve they don't want to involve developers in CS management 1 inch more than is absolutely necessary, because the opportunity cost for Valve, again, it's always worth reminding everybody, it's the opportunity cost for Valve, for a Valve dev to spend any time at all on esports is a net loss for Valve. Always. They will never make enough money on esports to make it worthwhile to take them off of working on the Valve, the Steam marketplace, because the Steam marketplace makes an absolute obscene amount of money. And so it's always a loss for Valve to do anything esports. So for them to get this involved is actually kind of a sign of Valve all of a sudden really showing interest, like actually showing interest, if they're willing to commit some hours into this kind of project, keeping tabs on CS. So we try to find the nuggets where we can. We try to find the silver lining where we can. After that, the other big piece that came up, speaking of ESL and their stranglehold on the scene, is EPL decided to change up their format. Have you seen that one? This was the article that just came out today. Fairly big bit of news is that ESL have actually gone ahead and expanded it. So speaking about continuing to provide as large a tournament as possible and keep as many teams in it as possible, they've actually expanded the full run of this tournament. What was the number of teams right off the bat? 24 teams was the usual, and now it's going to go up to 32 teams. So adding 8 teams to the Pro League, but also the changing it so that it's no longer round robin format in the group phase, because that was always leading to matches that were worthless at the end, and round robin is just cancer. They've actually gone ahead and changed it up to a multi elimination bracket kind of format. It's going to be split up into 4 groups, and you're going to have double elimination in the groups, as well as a last chance bracket as well, to make it in. So kind of like picking a little bit of a BLAST format. which is it's almost like you're doing like the Blast Fall, and then you have a showdown, and then you're going to be able to qualify into the playoffs, where the playoffs are single elimination. So it's pretty much like ESL are just reaching out and taking over Blast format. So Blast literally have no way to stand out now from ESL. Not even in format can they stand out from ESL, because ESL have now got the same teams, the same commentators, and the same format. So did you have any thoughts on ESL changing things up?
I mean, I think in general it's better. Like, one of the problems I've noticed in Counter-Strike is because online qualifiers are so unsatisfying, you actually do want your events to be more like kind of Itse and Cologne, where by using the plane, it basically feels like any competent team gets at least a chance to go to the LAN, and then it's at the LAN that you make your hay. Like, you actually show you're good at the LAN. The problem with stuff like Blast is you can have a team like Vitality just not qualify, even though they're a top 10 team in the world. Like, unfortunately, that sucks. And the fact that they lost in an online showdown, well, who cares? It's online, isn't it? So I think the good thing about this is it allows the actual teams to decide their fate by getting to the LAN. And crucially, taking the round robin is so enormous, in my opinion, because the round robin was ass. And the reason why I know more about that format than anyone, you can go back and check this. In the last Pro League, dude, I almost every single group managed to predict the crazy upset win that was just because of the way that format works. That, like, at the end, this team might not have to play or care, and they'll lose to, and it happened again and again. Like, I think I had like Liquid beat Cloud9. I had fucking like FaZe lose to GT. I had them all over the place with it, mate. It was ridiculous. So I think that format's ass. I want formats. As a general rule, as every format, in my opinion, each game should count. It has to mean something. It has to count towards something. Hopefully, it's my tournament life. I had to stay alive in the tournament. It's the easiest way to make the narrative make sense to me.
Is that there has to be something on the line at all points. Otherwise, especially when...
Just think about it. The worst match by definition is one in which one team doesn't care if they win or lose.
Yeah, every time it feels like you get that with...
You don't ever want that, do you? You'd never want that to happen, especially in a world. Also, let's be real. The other reason, whether you like it or not, you should never have that in Counter-Strike is everyone's a fucking match fixer. So why give them obvious opportunities to match fix? Like that. That's why you need to eliminate it completely. Like, if they want a match fix, they better be willing to actually potentially lose a real match. Like, don't let them just do it willy-nilly.
That's one of the bigger issues, considering you're already sponsored by 1xBet. You're sponsored by these massive betting organizations that are going to be running lines on all of your matches, and so you need to tighten up your format. Otherwise, you're just giving opportunity for fuckery down the line, match fixing or throwing, or these weird specific
scenarios. All that shit. Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much betting now. And especially when you have major sponsors that are betting websites as well, you need to be providing the format that's going to kind of limit that as much as possible. There's a couple of more bits of news here before we move on, where HLTV announced an award show, and the reason why that this it was more in this climate than anything, but they're going to do a live award show. Good for them, that's cool. But it is sponsored by 1xBet through and through. So I was kind of amused by this. Although, to be fair to HLTV, they're not an organization, at least it's to my knowledge, and this is kind of why I wanted to bring it up as well, because maybe you know of a case where they did try to signal something. But I mean, considering their entire website just runs on Russian betting websites and skin websites and etc., and they don't seem to be too picky about who's paying to run the website. It's like, okay, fine, fair enough. It's sponsored by 1xBet. Okay, like HLTV.
Are you ready for the hypocrisy?
All right, go for it. Hit me. Yeah, this is what I was wondering. I was like, okay, because I can't recall anything off the top of my head, but maybe
you'll know in a second. That's it. Earlier this year, as a virtue signal, HLTV.org took orgs like Na'Vi, which had 3 Russian players, and the old way the rule worked is when you went to the HLTV ranking, the country flag was based on the majority number of players. So back then, Na'Vi used to have a Russian flag, as did Outsiders. Now, what they did was they just removed it and changed it to be Ukrainian. So now, if that shows we don't support Russia, but you can't then take money from them. That's just obvious. I didn't make you do that. You did that. So they did do it. Everyone virtue signals something. It's just the world we live in now, mate. It's mental, innit? I know.
Here I thought that we could just have some good old fashioned, honest, straight up fuckery, like just fuckery,
Never.
like, hey, whatever. We take money from wherever. It doesn't matter. We're here to give you the stories. We're here to give you the stats, and that's just about it. Like, we don't give 2 shits about the rest of it. I thought that was the position, but if they're playing around games like that in the back, that's just tiresome. it's well, there it is. I mean, one good thing, I suppose, if you're looking at it from the female recognition side, and getting more attention for the female pros and that sort of thing in a good way, is they will be doing like a female award component to this as well. So like female best player, best team, that sort of thing. So that's cool because I mean, why not have that kind of recognition, right? If you really want to promote the female scene in what could potentially be a wholesome way, I suppose. What are you reacting to there?
I mean, here's the thing. I actually think it's better because the problem is anytime you have them combined, like the esports awards is, it's just going to make people either be like, you only won because it was a woke reason, or it'll just going to put that seed of doubt into your mind, doesn't it? If you just split it up, then it can't go wrong, can it? Simple wins here. So whoever the best female player wins hers. You can't have any problems. I think it's actually the better way to do it, mate.
There's no favoritism. Of course, I mean, if Olga wins, then we may have to ask some questions, but it is it's what
Not
it
least
is.
because not least the obvious question is how shit must female CS be?
At that point, yes.
Just a fucking
that is
imbecile.
actually, it's the way that they argue that's it's the way that that's an argument as well in that whole thing where it's just like, well, it clearly isn't a problem because it's not like they're winning or anything. I mean, look, they aren't even winning the tournament. I'm just like, it's like that's just the hardest self-own. You mean to tell me that some not even tier 3 male player can't even win? Like, he's not even good enough, and yet he's taking a spot away from a woman player. Like, he's taking away. Like, it's this whole.
Yeah, but that's why I say if you rewind to the beginning, the real question is what actually is the function of the league? If the function of the league, by the way, really is essentially it's a space for non-male players, by their definition, obviously, fine, then it's doing that. It's just the problem is, as you say, it was built around the idea of we're going to battle toxicity and we're going to promote women. So which is it? You got to pick. Because it's like they say in the Bible, you cannot serve two masters. So which master do you serve in this case?
Well, in this case right now, it's
although don't answer that because there's a very literal biblical answer there, but we'll skip that one. It's all good. But it's sweet. He's called Old Nick, and I ain't talking about Santa Claus.
There you go.
Then again, to be fair, that would be fitting because they are the people, Semmler, who bring out all the pitchforks. Their master's tool of choice.
It's funny how that works. Also,
there you go.
This was the one that had me tickled the other day, where it's the pride flag only has 6 colors, and the rainbow flag, God's rainbow, the rainbow has 7. And
what's the one that's missing
from the color that's removed from the pride flag is the emerald color.
Okay.
And so there's like an emerald between the green and the blue in a rainbow. There's this emerald color there.
Okay.
And if you go back in Revelation, it directly says that it's the color of the rainbow that's around God on the throne is emerald. And so why did they take the emerald color out of the pride
you think
flag?
it was like intentionally done? Right?
Yeah,
to remove God from the equation, right?
But why are they taking the emerald color out of the pride flag if there's a rainbow and rainbow? Yeah, I just throwing it out there.
People don't know, if you ever look in the Bible, things like precious gems and things are actually all related to like spiritual concepts, basically, as well as numbers.
Yeah. That's just one that tickles me. All right, what do we got? We had one bit of thing. I just want to discuss this, and then we can get into questions. Because this is the holiday. This is the Christmas episode after all. But NiP bench Esatag. So it's worth mentioning, NiP have gone ahead and decided to bench Esatag, and there's a lot of rumors going around right now, and it seems pretty likely that Headtrick might be one of the guys that they're going to, which would make sense. Just getting an op into this mix, get somebody in. I thought perhaps okay, you just keep Rez on the op because config's on the market right now. So if you can get config for free and get him to join up on NiP, it may be worth it because config as a rifler wouldn't be too shabby alongside the likes of Brolan, and that could be fun. You could be in an interesting position there, Hampus and Brolan and those guys. You put config in and okay. But if the whole role is to get an AWP, do you think that this is their play? Do you think that this is their play is to get an op on the roster and give Alexi B all the tools he needs?
I mean, it's also implied that, like, there's this report on HLTV.org that NiP's trying to get head trick from Navi, who is an AWPer. He was the guy who stood in for Simple in those blast groups, the one where Simple pretended to be coaching the team from, like, Dubai or whatever the fuck. So it does look like they go for an AWPer. The problem with this move is this. I don't hate it. Like, of all the players, you'd probably pick Esatag, but that's just because he's not as skilled as the other players. The thing that I don't get is this. If you remove this player and bring in an AWPer, who the fuck is doing any of the dirty work in this team? Because it ain't going to be surely Brolan or Rez. Like, surely it's not going to be these players. So that's the only question I have is that, because that one thing I've always thought, as long as you don't put him in a star role like Cloud9 did, as long as he's doing like the bitch work, I've always thought Esatag's a very serviceable player. Seems like he has a great attitude, always does his job, can do any job you ask him basically, except be a big fragger. As long as he's doing a job, like, you have to do something that takes a bit of brains, you have to play with patience and experience, and you have to know how to take space and throw a flashback. He's good at that. So in my opinion, that's the only thing I'm a bit concerned about. So I'm with you. Like, if I could, I would gamble on. By the way, spoiler, I think most of the top 10 teams could use Config, because he's just such a phenomenal talent, and he's going to be speaking English, and he's available, as you say, basically for free. So I don't know why more teams, but yeah, if they really are going for the head trick angle, I don't hate it. Like, there's a lot of talented CIS AWPers. I haven't seen that one enough to know. I only saw those blast groups, and he struggled a bit, but he was just thrown in the deep end with Harvey. What do you expect? And those blast groups, because it's all the partner teams, they're pretty stacked, if you remember what those looked like. So I would just say that, like, I do like the idea of getting a real AWPer. Like I said on the Res angle, I don't think it could last forever. And I do think Alexi B's already shown with this core, like, they can do something. So I think if they get a real AWPer, they can cook a gas. They could be a solid team.
I think it's just, for me, like, the big thing is, listen, again, you're talking about config, problems aside, no buyout. Dude, in CSGO, are you kidding me? That's like the major way that teams make money, is by charging hundreds of thousands of players for star players. You're telling me the config's in the market for free?
You know, when you speculated earlier before that move finished, that, like, the reason they, like, by mutual agreement cancelled the rest of Config's contract, your logic was to save some of the salary. The reason that now seems even more plausible is because, in my opinion, this was always going to happen. There was always going to be some team who was like, wait a minute, Config for free? Well, I mean, why not just take a chance? Like, at a minimum, why not have him stand in for me? You know what I mean? So to me, that suggests to me there was a bigger reason that we just want to get rid of him, Semmler. Like you say, maybe they saved money, because otherwise, logically, what you would do is say you're in contract prison on the bench, and then someone could buy you, even if it's only for 50k. 50k is still pretty big. So that implies to me somehow they did make it out on that deal. I don't think Astralis is stupid on that one, Semmler.
No, it's not that. It's just that that may have been the way, because it could have also been that just config was like, fuck you, I'm not getting out of the contract. You know, so that could have been a way that Astralis sweetened the deal and actually got config out, because config could have very well put himself on the bench and just gathered a paycheck, and, you know, eventually maybe he gets back onto the Astralis roster. I don't know. It could have been a different, you know, it could have been a two-way street in that sense, where Astralis are like, listen, we'll let you out of your contract, no buyout, you're free to go, just leave. You know, it may very well be in that sort of scenario as well. So that, you know, so that it's a quick landing on his feet in another organization, and so they just get him to drop his side of the contract as well. That could have been a thing. But regardless, I mean, I don't know. Regardless, if config's on the market right now and you can get him for free, I feel like you should be taking the risk. If you're a tier 1 team right now, like, I feel, and you need some additional firepower, which everybody always needs more firepower. I mean, you should probably be thinking about it, right? You really should be giving it some thought. So that was definitely like an interesting little tidbit that's actually opened up here, and so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on NiP and see, like, where they go with this. Pretty sure they're going to want to get moving on it quick, because you're, you know, once the New Year's holidays are over, that's it. You're going to be wanting to boot camp and get ready for the new season. So, like,
put it this way, I would just say this is my final word on this matter. I always thought Esatag was a player where the stats have never looked good on paper, but I actually think in the server he looks way better than the stats. Right. Like, he looks like a competent player every time I watched him play for years now. And
I mean, and he ended the year strong, terrifically strong for him, with his showing, you know, playing for Heroic. You know, that's against a competitive.
No, I wasn't. I was talking about Esatag.
Oh, Esatag. Okay,
I meant Esatag.
I was thinking about config in the sense that
I just mean because he's cut now, so who knows if he'll play again? Maybe he'll disappear in a fucking tier 2. But I think Esatag's a solid player. He can be in the top 10 team for sure.
This is a bit of a bigger topic, but we can make it just a quick one. But I got curious to see, like, what the actual viewership stats were like throughout the year, because there's been a lot of focus on Rio. Like, Rio, for example, didn't break any new records, right? It didn't set anything new. It did well on viewership hours, but it didn't set a new peak. And I was kind of curious about that. So we'll put these in the description. But I went ahead and gathered up all of the tier 1 S tier like events for the year in terms of viewership. But it's just one thing, because I was like, the Blast Premier and Blast Premier Fall and Blast Worlds just really did not knock it out of the park in terms of viewership. Now, is this because they were competing with the world with the World Cup, the football World Cup at the same time? I figured out, dude. I mean, it's kind of obvious if we knew. The reason why the finals were so early for the Blast World Finals was because the World Cup finals were literally coming up right after it. So there's no way you're competing directly with those. But I think that might have actually stunted the viewership as well overall, because if you've only got 2 hours in the day for, to watch something, are you going to watch the Blast World Finals or are you going to watch the World Cup Finals, right?
Think about this. One of the fucking teams was Team Liquid. Dude, you're starting the game at like 2 a.m. West Coast time or something. Like, no one's watching this game. Like, maybe some East Coast people are staying up and they're going to watch it. That's it. So, like, you also crippled part of the viewership for that. The problem with that one is I can't totally blame them, Semmler. Like, if people don't know, like, the World Cup obviously got, like, if you don't know, the World Cup's normally in the summer, isn't it? They had to, like, change all the shit around, didn't they? So, like, in theory, they should have been in summertime, shouldn't it? So I get that, like, it was probably hard to schedule and book the venue. And there's a lot of moving parts that are way trickier than you know if you're a fan, basically.
It's kind of that short end of the stick. You just got the short end of the stick if you're Blast. And the schedule, you probably set up all of your schedule, months and months in advance. So if something changes on that, well, then you're just shit out of luck, and that's just the way it is. But it was just interesting that they only averaged 160,000 viewers, and they peaked at 378,000. So it's just really, really underperformed in terms of events. Not a strong finish to the year at all. So the thing is that you're gonna have to find a solution, because you signed a 3-year deal with Abu Dhabi Gaming, and it would seem to indicate that the World Finals are going to happen in Abu Dhabi in this venue for the next few years. So this isn't something where it's just like, oh, that was a one-off, it didn't work, better luck next time. It's no, you're going to have to find a solution to make this work if this is where you're going to host your World Finals for the next 2 years. So this is actually the lowest S tier tournament apart from like the Rubet Cup. Throughout the year, Rubet peaked at 191, and that was in June. So it's just, even IEM Dallas, in May had 430,000 peak. So it's just something to keep in mind, that I don't know if this is due to viewer fatigue because it's the end of the year. There was a lot to compete with. World Cup Finals was a thing that you had to compete with, and so maybe that was tough to compete for eyeballs. But it didn't feel like it felt like, if anything, we're coming out of the lockdowns. We're coming into the first, real LAN circuit since the lockdowns. We ended last year with Stockholm and the Blast Fall Finals in Copenhagen, right? Big arena events. And that kind of carried over at the beginning of this year, because to put things in perspective, right? IEM Katowice peaks at 1.1 million viewers, right? So we're talking 3 times the numbers for at the beginning of the year for a big arena event. And then that just slowly declined throughout the year. And then we wind up, petering out at around 400,000 peak, 360,000 peak at the end. So I'm kind of curious to see if this was like a question of just viewer fatigue throughout the year. And there wasn't just enough to keep people, chomping at the bit after the Rio Major, or if this is a trend that we're going to keep seeing with CS going into the beginning of next year. So we'll have to keep an eye on the Blast spring groups at the beginning of next year and at Katowice.
I wonder as well, to be fair, if anything was to do with like the level of play, because I do think the level of play in the game got way worse the last few months of the year. Like, it was doing really well right through to when the last player break was, because we had like Cologne was like the high peak of the year for me. That was an amazing final. And then after that, it was like, there were some good matches, but the level of, it got really messy in the top 10. The major was a nightmare. Like, to be fair, it wasn't necessarily the best CS to watch either.
Yeah. It's that James style. It's something that you've talked about in the past, where it's like some teams just, they do not have that star power, that draw to bring viewers in, and that really is just the case. And so it may very well be that it's a good thing. I don't know. We'll see how that pans out. But yeah, maybe the meta. Maybe that's also why maybe the devs are thinking of going for some shifts in how they want to run things. Making moves with the map pool. Trying to get some more exciting maps in. Maybe Anubis they feel like Anubis could be the answer to that. And then maybe shifting out Vertigo and Ancient and picking up some more high-paced maps.
The problem
game
is,
certainly does take
again,
longer to play.
Valve are such boomers and they don't know anything about CSGO. So what happened is in passing, someone heard, like in the elevator, the big boss guy at Valve heard someone say, the problem with CSGO is we don't have any new fans. Where are all the newbies? And he just misheard that. And he was like, get me a Nubis. Get me a Nubis. And then they just got him a shit map. It's like, whatever. Another mistake, another damn misunderstanding. Actually, it's not a bad map, to be fair. It's not terrible.
It's not, yeah, it's kind of growing on me.
There's something there. There's something. I want to see it a few times.
I want to see some more work, but yeah, I'm like, when the teams have more time to develop on it, it'll be interesting, for sure. All right, question time. Let's get into it. Let's see. Scrolling into questions, there were a few left over, and if you have time, if you haven't asked your question, you can definitely get in there still.
You have to do it on Discord, not in Twitch chat.
And on Discord, yeah. But all right, kicking it off. It's Young Badger. Let me see here. It's Young Badger. Semmler and Thorin, what advice would you give to someone considering moving countries to further their career? Should
have said what career, obviously.
Yeah, it really does depend, like what career. Also depends on, like, do you have family back where you're at? How committed are you to that career?
You know, we have no variables there. Like, what is your career?
Variables to work with.
Are you sucking dick in the street? Well, where are you moving to? Because if you move into like Russia, probably a bad career move there. I'd maybe move somewhere nicer, somewhere with nice weather.
Maybe it's like I mean, I don't know, man. What advice would you give to someone considering moving? Because I mean, I don't know, dude. I got on a plane with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket to fucking Sweden, and I was like, okay, let's go. Let's figure this out. So
right, here's my advice.
Committed.
This is a vague piece of advice, but I can give it to every single person. If you're thinking of moving for your career, the only advice I can give you is don't move to Man. Man's full. So pick any other country you want, but not Man. Don't move to Man.
There you go.
So, I can apply that to everyone. That is a universal statement. Problem solved.
Easy. Done. Dusted. All right, Badger, dude, either you're all in. If you're going to move for the sake of your career, you better fucking crush your career. Because if you're giving up on your relationships with your friends, with your family, if you're not all in on your career, I'd say actually prioritize your friends and family and stay where the fuck you are and figure out what your career is there so that you're close to your friends and your family. Because moving to the other side of the world and living away from friends and family is not for everybody. So you have to be all in on your career and completely all in on your career, and that's it. Otherwise, it's probably worth more staying with your friends and your family. Don't believe that. Don't buy the hype.
Yes. The difference is friends and family will affect your happiness more than whatever job success you get, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. It's better to stay close to them. Architect of Korean esports-based Joe, Ronaldo or Messi, who might be their counterparts in esports? And now I don't. That's the thing. I don't follow football at all.
Right. Here's the problem. Whenever you do any comparison, Semmler, I can tell you all morons do is go, yeah, but here's a way that he's not like that. So the point of it, just like an analogy, is we're picking like usually one aspect that they're like this. So basically, I would personally say that if you had to go between the two, like I think the obvious example, because I even notice it seems like fans break down this way, is I would do like Ziwu and Simple. So in my opinion, Ziwu's more like Messi and Simple's like Ronaldo. Because if you know the way why people like the two players, it tends to be that people who worship Messi like the fact that he's got like an all-around game. It seems to come to him very naturally. He's good at setting up his team, but he's also a good star and carry. And he's just someone where he seems like he's just naturally just seems like he has polish. Everything he does has grace, and Ziwu's like that. Ziwu, even from day one in 2019, in a clutch, just looks like he was just born to play CS. He just knows what to do. He's always in the right spot. He never seems like he's like panicked and has to like do like a Shiro, like forced crazy up. He always looks like he's got space and time. So to me, the Ronaldo to Simple example is they're just like the pure like highest skill and highest fitness and ability level you can think of. And if you like Simple, you like him because he gets the most frags every time. If you like Ronaldo, he scores the most goals. It's just about like you're just the most extreme possible metric to achieve success from, they achieve from. So I think there's a contrast for the two for you there.
Yeah, I think bang on the money. I couldn't do better. I have not watched Ronaldo or Messi. I just don't watch football. Sorry, guys. That's to the point where I'm actually calling it football. I should be calling it soccer. My bad. All right, Santiago Lafarga. What out-of-game aspect do you think has the most potential to elevate the performance of CSGO teams currently if it was improved? For example, different coaching style, psychology, player lifestyle and health, team management. super straightforward for me. Just hit the gym regularly. If you consistently hit the gym regularly, you make that a habit, that is something that you're doing on the regular, no matter what you're doing. But I think that would have the biggest carryover, and it's why we've started to see teams actually start to do that and have, like, you know, speaking of Zaiwu, Vitality, you know, like they've actually hired a coach and they do the team exercises together and they do that sort of thing. It's like that is probably the biggest bang for your buck, is getting some physical exercise in, because it's already challenging to be playing the game mentally and physically. I mean, the players are definitely going to be drained after a long day of gaming, but if you add in some actual physical movement as well, where you're getting the cardiovascular system moving and you're getting that, you're helping your body flush out the bullshit from you just sitting there all day. If you do that on top of it, you're going to sleep better. Stress is going to be better. I feel like there's going to be so many different benefits to it that could just immediately improve your game versus any of the psychology or any of that sort of thing.
Since he left the option for like all external elements, does he mean like for professional players and teams or just like casuals?
I'm assuming that he wants to know about the professional.
Because if he means for pro teams, I actually think in the video I did with Cassard on my channel, I did an interview about how like coaching could be revolutionized. And I thought he had some really great points there. Because basically one thing he thinks, and I agree with him, that is massively missing in games like CSGO, which are incredibly information heavy, burdened games, is having large coaching staffs. So you don't just want a coach. You want it to be like the NFL, where there's like a coaching staff for every element of the game. Like for real, there should be a different coach on CT and T side. It's a totally different side of the game involving different factors. Like on CT side, you want the anti-strats, but you mainly want that to like read what they're doing. On T side, you want like a different, like it's going to be mainly about your execution. So in a world where the CSGO format is still like, right, we won our match today, we probably play in like 14 hours from now. There isn't enough time logistically for one coach to do everything he could. If you really did have that like full coaching approach, I could see times where you could completely figure an opponent out, or you could level your game up in a space of a day. I think that could be amazing if you had like the proper budget to buy like a 4 or 5 man coaching staff of competent people. And that could be amazing. That could really, if you think about what Blade alone does for his team, imagine you had like 3 or 4 Blades and you could just elevate the whole squad. And you could even have people, think about this, Semmler, you could even have people when you have a squad like that, where one coach might even just work with the new rookie and the rest works for the rest of the squad. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't have time if it's Blade though. He has to do the whole team. So I think division of labor, it could just mean you could just level up like tiny little factors, but across the board, and you could potentially make your whole team better.
Exactly. It always makes me think of Moneyball, where they're talking, where it's like, actually Trevor Bauer has that on his YouTube channel, where it's like he spends time with with his pitching coach, and then there's the batting coach, and then there's this coach, and it's just like coach, physical trainer, like you got everything all mapped out. Every little aspect of the game has a coach. And you're probably right in the sense that maybe if you have that one coach, he's like maybe tweaking 1% here, 1% there. But if you have 10 coaches adding an additional 1% each, 10% improvement, I mean, you're winning trophies. You're doing and the opponents aren't doing that. You're making the difference. So that could be a big deal. All right, it's go. Best and worst airlines. I mean,
what's the
apart
best?
from the obvious, I mean, I guess worst.
Problem
would
is,
have
I
to be
haven't
like,
flown on the ones. I actually don't think I can answer best, Semmler, because I've never been on those ones that everyone says and say like Etihad or whatever. Like I've never been on one of those. I think the best that I've ever been on, logically, is maybe British Airways. Probably it. I don't think I've ever been on like the expensive ones. If people don't know, I fly KLM/Delta because I'm out of the Netherlands. So
and you fly business.
They're all right. Sometimes I've done it a couple of times.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
it was fine. It was no problem.
It's fine. It's nothing to write home about. It's really,
it's like, right in the middle.
I've never been on one of those where it's like you get your own fucking apartment.
No, exactly. That's what the Etihad ones apparently like. If you do like the business or the like first class on that, those are the ones similar where you can get your own shower and like it goes into a real double bed.
Like that. That's fucking amazing.
No, it does sound mega. Yeah,
it sounds amazing. Maybe like that once in a lifetime kind of thing. Just
you say once in a lifetime, or you just work with the right esports org and are willing to overlook enough deaths and enough human sorrow, in which case you can do it tomorrow. So
yeah, I've never had better than business. So business.
You know what I should really do, Semmler? I've realised what would be a genius idea, and I should do it. The only problem is at the moment I don't actually have a site that I write for. I guess I could do it on my website. I should do an article as satire, and I should satirize the screw tape letters, but it's how a demon would explain how he's going to ruin esports using like money and fucking. That would be fun. Wouldn't that be a good premise? Because it could do the same like concept, couldn't I? But it'd be just about esports and how
that is
how
one
you'd
of
like
my favorite
them
books. That is one of the top shelf books out there.
Because I always say the premise of that book is so fire. You don't have to like the book. It's a pretty good book, but the premise alone that's why it's so dodgy. That's never been made in like a movie or something. It could be so good.
It would hit way too close to home. That would they would have to corrupt it in some way, shape, or form.
True.
Of course, if it's coming out of Hollywood, it would get corrupted. But yeah, no, dude, that's like highly recommend that, guys. If you need a good book over the holidays, if you have some time, it's a short book.
It's a very short read. Yeah, you'll get into it. You'll read it in like a day or two easily.
Yeah, it's so good. Best and worst. I mean, I guess the worst airlines would have to be Ryanair or Spirit. I mean,
they're right up there. Yes. Anyone that's a cheap one, because here's the thing, I don't blame them. The whole reason they're able to be so cheap is they cut every corner. But yeah, it does suck. Like, for example, the worst thing I've always thought about those flights is because you're not like assigned seats and stuff, mate, like, it feels like your cattle being transported somewhere. Like, everyone get into this zone now, like, now move up, move. Like, it's almost like a prod behind you. Like,
exactly.
There's so about that because you feel so dehumanized, don't you, after that experience?
It's so brutal. All right, Hanoda, do you guys suffer with a lack of sun in the winter? Any tips on how to handle it?
I mean, technically, we all do because there's not enough sunlight in our area, right? In Europe, basically, in Northern Europe, there just isn't enough sunlight. So daily we do. You supplement,
it was the winter solstice yesterday as well. Yesterday was the 21st, so it was the winter solstice. So today, tomorrow, like these are the longest days of the year right now, in terms of nighttime, in Sweden. So it's fucking brutal. But like, supplement with vitamin D. First off, vitamin D, get that in you. Sweden, there's a lot of vitamin D in the milk. They supplement the milk with vitamin D here naturally. But if you can't, you should be taking like 5,000 IU of vitamin D a day here. That it does make a difference because, dude, I remember the first winter.
That's a point to make, by the way. The normal pill that you're going to find if you just go and say vitamin D, please, they're not going to give you enough. Is the other thing. You've got to look at the dosage, like Semmler says,
dosage and
it's one of those ones, a bit like magnesium. Look into this yourself. Don't be an idiot. But all I'll say is, from my experience, it looks like magnesium. You can also up the dose way beyond what the normal recommended. Like that's almost like a scam that they trick you into not taking enough.
Yeah. But it does make a difference. It's not bullshit because like the first couple of winters I was here, I was just getting mega depressed, it was so brutal, man, getting through the winters because you're just not getting sunlight. You're getting no sunlight throughout the day. It's fucking hard. And then I started supplementing vitamin D and it was like noticeable difference just right off the bat, just felt better. And so if you're living in a place like this, and of course, exercise, just get some normal just force yourself to get some exercise in, hit the gym, do something, but that'll also make you tired at the end of the day, so you get better sleep, and so you recover better. And that's pretty much how I handle it. Vitamin D all the way. Cheesecake enthusiast. Who are the CS:GO superstar players, past or present, whose playstyle you detested and or disliked? Aha. Well, the one that always comes to mind for me was Happy, and just watching the bait. The bait when it worked fine, fair enough, but it was just the way that he seemed to call the game around putting himself in a position to get easy kills or get kills. It was pretty wild to watch, especially when opponents always figured it out, where it's just like, oh, if the team is here, then Happy's on the opposite side of the map, and so they go punish him, shit like that. It was always painful to watch his play style, just because it was so obvious. But it feels like that was so long ago. I don't know about anybody in particular these days.
He's just saying which player is like painful to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious example in the modern day is Jame.
Yeah, he would be the one that comes to mind.
Because I always say this, right? Here's what's fucked about Jame. I actually realized this like halfway into my period of watching him. So not like the first year in a Vanguard. It was when we went to the online era and they got Yakin down, they got good. What I noticed with Jame was he's actually a pretty good fucking clutch player. It's just you have to sort of like trap him in the clutch. If he's in a scenario where there is no possibility to save and he just has to go into the 1v2, he wins a lot of them, mate. But if there's an exit, if there's sort of like a push, like this emergency exit to get out and he can go save, he'll just go and save. So that's why he's painful to me, because I actually do think I think because he's the IGL, I think he is sometimes not just selfish individually. I think he sometimes does like selfishly tank rounds in the game just to get himself the AWP again, which is like I get it if you like, it's one thing if you're fragging out and you're having a good game, but sometimes he does that egregiously. So that can be a bit painful for me to watch.
It's when you do it and you don't win the following round. That's when it's just like, dude. Like, you can't be saving guns. You can't like the purpose of saving is to get that impact.
The other one, since obviously this is on my mind because of the recent fucking stupid drama in Richard's video, Shroud. Because here's what people don't know. Shroud in 2015 was really fucking good. He was like a very up and coming, promising player. But actually, towards the end, before he got cut from Cloud9, dude, he was so below average in CS. It was actually a joke. What was mad was you would watch him for real stream CS and hit every headshot and look fucking nuts. And he would go to lands with Cloud9 and just be like some whack support player. It was just average as fuck. In the game, he wouldn't even frag out guys. It was so whack. I remember just being like, because what that implied to me, Semmler, this is why I used to go so hard at him. It implied to me his heart probably wasn't in pro CS. He probably just did it because it was like here's the thing, if I had to guess, I think at the time he was probably trapped in the cycle that is a real thing for streamers, where if you stay as a pro, it's going to keep your stream interest up. And so it's just like, it's like a circular thing. It's part of why I did events for so long, to keep my content symbiotically in that relationship. And your worry is, if I stop doing it, do people stop watching the content? Or in this case, stop watching me streaming? Now, he couldn't have known, actually, he would have become like the biggest streamer in the world when he went stream only. But I thought the period when he was trying to do both loads, it was painful to watch. He was just an underwhelming player. And he had a lot of fanboys even back then, even when he wasn't that good.
That was one of the jokes at the time, right? Was to put a second monitor next to him on stage and to have like a fake chat going, just
yeah, exactly.
So he could have the illusion that he was streaming at the same time, right? Because then maybe he'd just be popping off. But no, never a thing. Sorry, guys, we just couldn't do that. But yeah, no, I get your feeling on that one for sure. It was he definitely always comes across as one of the players where it's just like, was it untapped potential, or did he reach the peak? Did he reach his height?
Also, by the way, was there another component? Like, it was supposed to be one that we really liked to watch as well as, or was it just
detested, dislike?
Just detested.
The player that you just hated to watch, I guess. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess. Well, hold on. Okay. Well, BZ, what is the singular performance in a game that was most memorable, greatest to you, and why? So this would be the most memorable or greatest performance, singular performance in a game. Most memorable and greatest.
I mean, the problem is those two aren't the same thing to me, so I'm just going to go with most memorable, I guess.
Sure, the one that always. Why is it but it's like a meme game. It was one of the first cups. It was when Kenny dropped that 50 bomb or something, and they still lost.
The Pantamera one, iOS Pantamera final, yes.
Like I always, and for whatever reason, I always think of just like that. It was just Kenny, like he could literally drop like 46 frags or something in regulation, and still somehow that team lost. It was just agony, just agonizing.
That's a very memorable one, yeah, for sure.
But
that's
was
basically the iconic Kenny-esque game. No, that was Fnatic they were playing against.
Was it Fnatic that they were playing
against?
Yes,
he played against Fnatic in the final, and at the time it was the Fnatic that won kind of each like 2 weeks later or whatever. So
yeah, that was
the joke was, that's why it was so perfect, Semmler, because Kenny S was the best player and Fnatic was the best team, and what it showed you was, this is why it's a team game, because one guy can drop 50 and still lose the fucking game. So in fact, I even think off the top of my head, this is how good my memory is. You can go back and watch that game. I think what ruins it is late in the game, Apex makes some like stupid push and like OT and loses the game for them or something like. Go back and look. I just remember these
something
things.
like that, yeah.
Something mad like that happened that ruined the whole thing. Here's the thing. I have a similar one. It's actually, funny enough, perfect synergy, even though we didn't intend it, because mine is one where someone played godlike CS but lost the final. It's when Simple lost that Star Series final at the beginning of 2018 to Mouse Sports, if you remember. This is the one where in the third map, Mirage, or maybe that was the second map, actually, I think, Na'Vi was up one map, so they would win the final 2-0 if they won this map. Simple also like had a game. I think in regulation he had 42 kills or something. But the point was that was the one where Zeus had like 4, and then when he got like a double kill with the CZ, Henry G said the line like Zeus does something, which made like Zeus get all butthurt, even though it's like that's how egregious a person Zeus is, that he would dare to tank a whole game and then go, "How dare you imply?" Yeah, you're like, are you fucking kidding me? I feel like when I meet people like Zeus, by the way, I feel like this is why I was put on this fucking realm, Semmler, is because people like that, you look at them and because of the way social status works and, you know, like accomplishment, and they just get to waltz around and no one ever tells them, like, Emperor, you're not wearing any clothes. And I just go, you're bitch ass naked whore. And they go, what the fuck? And it's like, that's what I'm here for. That is my job. I'm essentially the little kid whose job is just to go, but the Emperor has no clothes on. And they're all like, shut up, what are you doing? And I'm like, it's just true. It's just true.
I can't go either.
So that was a classic one. So go back, it was Star Series Season 4, the final, Na'Vi against Mouse Sports. It's the one where basically, it's really early in the year. This was the tournament where it was like, Simple is just going to be the GOAT, mate. When you watch this tournament, it's like, it's unbelievable the shit he does. Like every single series is just hard carrying the whole time. And in this final, by the way, it's the one where people might remember the kill when I say this now. In this final, there's a round where Simple with the Deagle on Mirage goes to the right side of top mid and he peeks towards the connector, and Oscar has like an AWP in the connector or something, and Simple just kills him with a Deagle headshot instantly. In like a final, like, mate, this whole match is just like, again, like the idea he lost this match is so criminal. So criminal.
Divorce lives in Lucky's shadow. Which CSGO top pro do you consider to be the most intelligent person outside of the game, and why?
Ooh, I mean, the shortlist, like immediately a name like Elijah's coming to mind. He's a very intelligent guy from what I can see.
Kerrigan is always coming to mind as well.
Carrigan's up there.
The guy that actually comes to my mind, the Kingmaker, NBK. Because he was always able to maneuver in order to be on the next team, and to be on the next team that was competing. He's had one of the longest careers in French CS, still going.
I would guess people like I would think people like Existence and Blade should probably be up there. They seem like super cerebral guys, very reflective. What I love about those guys is I can see why they were so great in Counter-Strike Semmler, because they're both guys who never like impulsively react emotionally. Something I'm very poor at, by the way. They are the guys who, if you ask them something, they like take it in and like think for a moment and they just answer what they want to say. Which is I'm always impressed with that quality, you know.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Existence, of course, he's the obvious one. That's just. That's such a good answer.
Does it have to be a player, by the way?
Most intelligent person outside of the game.
There you go. I've got a good one for you then. I actually will include Richard Lewis. Here's why. Because Richard Lewis is one of those guys where the joke is, if I meet up with Richard back in Vegas years ago when I would go through for like a few days, we weren't talking about CS, motherfucker. We were talking about everything but CS. He's a guy where, as long as he's into that topic, you can chop it up on any topic, NFL, politics. Like, he's a guy who's very well read, so he'll always have all these interesting takes. And I always like guys where they don't just have their own take, but they're like, if you want to read more about that, check out this book. Like that, those are the people you want as your friends. They're fucking fire. Like, Richard's one of the best conversationalists you've ever met.
Yeah, he is, and also fucking straight fire bants day
absolutely,
in, day out.
Yeah. What's sad is in the modern day, you guys don't know, he's almost self-censored himself on his stream. He'll go even harder in real life, of course. The real Richard never died. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, no, but we'll never get back to the glory days of the green.
Oh, you can't. There's only idiots like me think you can still say all that shit.
No. All right, Zumba, what is your favorite picture in esports?
Ooh, I mean, that's a tough one, because here's the thing. I will say one thing that I actually quite like about the modern day is people are doing a good job of pointing out iconic ones. Like, remember last year, that one of Device where he was at like that tournament before he left the IM Winter, where he was sort of like looking down on the major or whatever it was, where he sort of looked like he was like in the darkness looking down, then like Astralis, like Zonic or something was like contrast. That's like a cool one. I thought the one this year of Elijah at the major where he was crying, but he's still signing the shirts was pretty cool. So there's some pretty cool ones, but here's the problem. Even though it's childish, and I don't care, I'm going to say my favorite esports picture is a picture from, I think it was from 2011, I think it was. It was either DreamHack Winter 2010 or it was like DreamHack Summer 2011 or something. It was the one where Senya from Na'Vi was playing in the final, and when he won a round against the Danes of MTW, he just literally stood up and did that across the stage. And at the time, this is right before everyone got woke online, Semmler. Even though at the time people complained they were like MTW fans, we saw he got away with it. He didn't get punished. He didn't get fined, nothing. Because back then you were just like, I guess that's just what he's doing. Like, and I just remember seeing it and just being like, holy shit. Like, this guy doesn't give a fuck. Because he did it. If you don't know, he was wild as fuck as a player.
That is fucking, I'd never heard that story. That's gangster. Fucking amazing. The one that I mean, it's not my favorite, but it's the meme that just keeps popping into my head, is just how Red Eye managed to put himself into that picture with Get Right when Get Right finally won his fucking
ESL Core 2014. Yes.
And
because the best part about it is
like his dad or something.
Yeah, that's the best part, Semmler. It's not even just that he hugged him. Because here's the thing: if people don't know, Get Right and Red Eye are friends, and they'll obviously met each other at a million events already from 1.6 to CS:GO. So it is true that they are friends, and I can understand why Red Eye thought cool, my friends won. Like, let's have a moment. The problem is, though, like you say, if you saw the photo and you weren't from esports, the first thing you would assume is like, oh, is that his dad? And you're like, no. Like, oh,
No,
brother or something, or uncle. Like, no. Because the way he's hugging him is sort of like, it's okay. Shh.
Yeah, I know, right?
Let's just stay in this moment with me. It's so there is some
one of my
even though I love Red Eye, it is just a bit cringe. I'll just say it's a bit cringe.
It's still one of my favorites.
And by the way, unironically, I miss Red Eye, mate. He is actually one of those guys where one thing I've learned over the years is this: doesn't matter what beefs you have with people or people you just dislike, as long as it's not for some fucked up reason that they're trying to ruin esports. These people, you cannot replace characters, mate. Like, we can have all the new hosts and interviews come in. Red Eye had a very distinct character, and he built up the whole persona. He was very good at what he did. I always thought he was even if I was going to laugh at it, I always wanted him at the event to know what the fuck's he going to say next. What's he going to do next? He's just an interesting guy to throw in the mix.
Oh, he lives on in the brutal savage wrecked meme.
Oh yes, of course.
Forevermore. All right, Jerk. Favorite weight exercise in the gym? Do you have a favorite weight exercise in the gym?
The problem is, I just like almost anything to do with arms. Like, I don't know why. It must just be my body type. I find anything that's to do with like arm muscles, it can be hard to do, but I never get pain. Do you know what I mean? Like, it can, like I feel like I can get to a point where I can't do anymore, but I don't get like, oh, I'm tortured, this is pain. Like, whereas I do find like some of the like fucking core exercises, like you have to mentally go, right, let's just mentally lock in now. This is all about body. Like,
that's when time is relative. It's like time has never moved slower than when you're in a plank.
So I'll just take any simple thing, like, one of those machines where you just pull the bar down and it just does like these muscles here, basically. I like all those ones, the ones that you just do that one back like that.
The row. That's what I was about to say. My favorite exercise is the row.
Yes.
Like the bent over row, like it's such a satisfying exercise. You can feel everything firing off in your back, your arms, you're just working everything. So for me, rows, deadlifts, like just the pulling, compound lifts, I just love. So I could do those all day. All right, last question for the night. Cosja le Français. Is CS on a downward trend? Well, we didn't end on a high note. Is CS on a downward trend? I mean, that's kind of the question that I was wondering myself with the viewer statistics there at the end. It's a point that was made earlier in the episode when I brought up viewer statistics, and I was kind of curious if this is indicating a trend that viewership is fatigued, and so are we on a downward trend because of that? If you look at player base, no. Counter-Strike is doing just fine in terms of player base and still just kicking along, pretty very stable in a very healthy place. So as far as player base is concerned, don't believe the hype. I mean, it's fine. It's just more just about, like the esports side of things, you're kind of wondering right now because the viewership kind of dipped at the end of the year there. But that's all we have to go off of. And we don't know if it's because it was competing with the World Cup and those viewers, the viewers are going to come back at the beginning of the year after a break or what. But I wouldn't say that CS is on a downward trend. No. What do you think about that?
No. I just think, like I said, I think that we just have had some tournaments that weren't that great. Some of the logistical things were fucked up, like the match takes place at 11 a.m. before the World Cup final. So I think things like that is just what made it feel not as good. Like Blast World Finals didn't feel like that awesome event to end the year. In fact, Blast 4 Finals was way better. So I think it's just more like that. To me, I thought and major final playoffs was shit. I think overall CS is in a fine place. And in fact, to me, I'm still loving it because I still feel like I haven't had enough CS since we had all the online era. I'm still enjoying having LANs every month and a half or whatever. I think it's pretty good.
Right now, if you look at Steam charts, CS is still current players 700,000, peak players 1 million, 1,000,000.6, 1,000,000.06, 1,065,000. But still, like that's just fine. It's still the #1 top game on Steam. So like the idea that CS it's over, it's dead game or whatever, boring. No, it's still bringing in players. It's still peaking. It's still peaking at over 1 million. So I mean. I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think it's going to be more about like what kind of big storylines can we get going. I mean, viewership is driven by compelling teams as well. So if anything, we're in a little bit of a dearth there, perhaps, because it's like if FaZe get knocked out, FaZe have a lot of draw in terms of viewership. So it'll probably be more along those lines, whether or not we have a resurgence of FaZe or if there's another big compelling storyline that kicks off. But yeah, dude, that's a show. We made it once again. Thanks so much, my dude. Thanks so much for yet another great show. Have a Merry Christmas. And in the Sweden, you know, you say good fortsättning as well, you know, so happy Merry Christmas.
Yeah, good for whoever he is. Don't know him, but yeah, congrats.
There you go.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. See you next year. Innit?
Aye. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support, as always. Thanks for leaving comments, likes, share the podcast, all of that. But, you know, thank you very much for watching. And I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. Spend some time with friends, spend some time with family, having a good time. Leave the politics at the door. Just have a wholesome time with the fam. The politics will still be there when you get back. So later, everybody. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Chris is still in the picture. Still very much in the round.